ahead and call the Gaming Authority meeting to order. We'll start with roll call, please.
Isaac McKechnie.
Here.
Larry Barbeau.
Here.
Tyler LaPlante. Kimberly Gravel. Lana Cosley Smith. Bridget Sorensen. Here. Aaron Paymont.
Here.
Kimberly Hampton.
Here.
Sean Borowitz.
Here.
Rob McGrory.
Here.
Kimberly Lee.
Here.
Michael McCurchie.
Here.
Austin Lowe's.
Here. Okay, so we have a quorum on today's Gaming Authority meeting. We have the following items. We have, under business, we have the approval of minutes from 4:15, 5:07, and 5:13. And we have the following resolution: waiver of sovereign immunity and consent to waiver of tribal court jurisdiction, Gunlock Champion, Inc., restaurant renovations. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in support signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, those abstaining, motion carries and the agenda is adopted. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve minutes from 4:15, 5:07, and 5:13. Motion by Isaac, support by Larry. Any discussion on any of the minutes? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in support signify by saying aye. Those opposed, those abstaining, motion carries. And that brings us to our one and only resolution, which is waiver of sovereign immunity and consent to waiver of tribal court jurisdiction, Gunlock Champion, Inc., restaurant renovations.
Any objection to waiving the reading?
So, any objection to the reading being waived? Okay, so hearing no objection, the reading will be waived. Is there a motion and a second? Motion. Motion by Isaac and support by Aaron. Al, can you guys come up to the front and explain this resolution, please?
Excuse me.
This resolution is much like the original one with Gunlock Champion, the waiver of sovereign immunity to begin construction on the restaurant for BlackRock.
Any discussion from the Board of Directors? Any questions? Okay.
This is the one we raised.
Austin,
Yes.
just real quickly, if it's similar to what we did last time, I guess exactly why do we need a change?
It's a different project altogether with a different company, like working with BlackRock.
Okay.
It's a different contract because while it's the same construction management firm, it's different architect firms. So we need a different contract with it.
Okay, any other questions, comments from anybody? Okay, roll call, please.
Larry.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Bridget.
Yes.
Kimberly Hampton.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Kimberly Lee.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. That concludes all the items that we have on today's Gaming Authority meeting, so without objection, meeting adjourned. Hearing no objection, meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys. Okay, so now we're back into the regular workshop. And the item that we're on right now is homecoming powwow committee requests. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we're going to go in recess for a little while. We're going to collect the staff that need to be here for that presentation. So we'll be in recess momentarily. Get started again. The item that we're currently on right now is homecoming powwow committee requests. So take it away, Tyler, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. Chairman of the Homecoming Powwow Committee, Tyler Bouchard. So today, we're just kind of talking about kind of the same thing that we did last year. Just need some help from some things, casino-wide, tribal-wide, in order to make this powwow a little bit smoother. We only have about maybe 6 or 7 people who are on the committee. With the amount of people that we have coming in the powwow, it's really, really hard to facilitate everything with just us 5, 6 people who are there consistently throughout the powwow. So I sent the list in last week. Hopefully you guys had a chance to look at it. So we're just going down the line and seeing if this stuff is available for us to utilize or asking for help for the powwow.
Okay, before we go any further, Jess, why don't you join us at the table? Bill, Dana, Alan, because some of the requests have to do with you guys. So does everyone have this list in front of them right now? It's in your packet? Okay. So Tyler, just go through each request individually, if that's okay. So the first request is for entertainment, and they're requesting that we set up a PA on Saturday, July 5th, 6th, possibly the 4th, but they'll know they're in a parade. They have limited staff who understand how PA systems work, so they need help with that. So casino, can you guys help out with that?
So Jared's not here, and we can absolutely try our best, but I'd like to let you guys all know that we also have conflicting resource issues because we put our July 4th parade float together on that same day, and that takes quite a bit of our resources. So it really depends on what specific days you're looking for the entertainment staff to set the PA up.
Yeah, Saturday, July 5th and Sunday, July 6th. And I know that there's the parade on the 4th, so if they're unable to do it on the 4th, that we can take that, but yeah.
Okay.
So Al, Dana, does that conflict with anything?
Well, the float's on the 4th, so the 5th and 6th, we should be able to supply somebody to set it up.
Okay, very good. All right, next up, maintenance. So they're looking to have garbage picked up every hour and a half until the powwow is done. Is that something we can help out with as well? Do you guys have capacity?
What was the schedule last year? Was it an hour and a half?
Yep.
Hour and a half.
Was it security doing it or maintenance?
Well, security was patrolling also.
Okay.
Buildings used to do that.
So it is a lot, and we are short-staffed. We can absolutely help out, and I do understand that the garbage does need to be picked up, but if there's any other additional resources that we can apply to it, it would be helpful for us.
Yeah, so as the powwow committee, we have 2 designated guys as well who are on the garbages. Last year, they ended up having to pick them up every half an hour just because they were getting full so fast. So we just need some help to be able to maintain the amount of load. And also what we did this year is we added 10 more garbage cans, so the load isn't so much. We're trying to, basically what happened is we had a huge influx last year that we were not expecting really, which is wonderful for our powwow. It created a big overload of work for all of us who are on the powwow committee. So we're trying to basically prepare for that again this year.
Yeah,
Right.
spread the work out so it's not all on you guys. Bill, you had a question, comment?
I was just going to suggest that I get a hold of Andrew, and maybe between the casino and us, we set up a schedule, and so that they're not taking the whole load, and facilities isn't taking the whole load, but everybody will share and
If you guys
what
can work
needs to get
together on
done.
that would be really appreciated. Okay. All right, so between facilities and Kuwaitan, we can have that garbage picked up. Let's move on to accounting. Could you explain to Bill what you're requesting there?
So basically, we're asking for the same thing as we had last year, Bill. We worked together, and I know that accounting may not be able to accommodate that this year. If we can get somebody to come in, at least for the big payout days, especially Sunday. Sunday would be the big one that we're looking for, which is when we pay out all the contests. And that's where the majority of that big lump sum of money comes out. If we can get somebody those days, all the days, we're just looking for assistance if possible.
Yep, we were there last year, so I'll set up a schedule and let you know what that is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to facilities, and Bill is also over facilities at this point, so he's the right guy to continue this conversation with. What do you need from facilities?
Just like last year, we just need one person on staff for emergencies. If something happens at the powwow grounds, electricities, jumps, breaker breaks, something like that, water lines, anything like that, we just need an emergency number that we can call and have the ability to fix anything that needs to be fixed. That way we're able to call somebody when something crazy happens.
Okay, Aaron?
Like muddy roads, you had to do that last year, but do we have a plan for that?
My
So,
checkbook?
You want to do it again?
Tyler knows how to get a hold of you something fast. No, last year we had a pretty bad downpour and there's mud everywhere, and Tyler got a hold of me to bring him up some straw, so I was happy to help out. But if we can have a system in place, just in case I'm unavailable, I mean, that might be more helpful for you guys.
So,
welcome speech.
So we have this year, working with facilities in Andrew, we're actually preparing for that already, and we're setting up around where the vendors would be. They're getting packed down, so we don't have to worry so much about the mud being such a mess. Unfortunately, the powwow's outside, so we do have to deal with weather issues, but hopefully we won't get as bad of a downpour, and luckily we were able to accommodate the best we could last year.
It didn't deter anybody from coming?
No, not at all. That powwow was packed last year.
But Bill, maybe we can have someone on standby, like on call, just in the event that there's an emergency that they need to get brought in.
We're gonna for sure have somebody on standby. We're also bringing in some gravel. It's gonna be spread around the outside of the concrete area where all the vendors are, in between the power boxes and the concrete.
Very good.
It'll be compacted, so rain should not be an issue. Mud should not be an issue this year.
Very good. I appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to security. So you're requesting that a walkthrough take place every couple hours just to make sure that the grounds are, well controlled, there's no vandalism. So are you looking for Kuwaitan security or law enforcement or a combination of both?
We typically have 1 or 2 officers there at all times at the powwow, but 1 or 2 officers is not enough to patrol the entire powwow grounds, as well as our staff. We can only see so much, especially with that many people. We estimated about 2,500 people were there last year. You have cars parked all the way almost by the elders' houses off of Ice Circle, and they were backed up all the way to the mailbox past the bridge over on the other side. So, we had every parking lot was packed. It was nuts in there. So to be able to patrol and keep an eye on everything, we had vandalism that happens in our shower buildings, things like that we can't keep an eye on everything all at once.
Okay, Rob has a question or comment, then Aaron.
Hey, Tyler, I know we talked about it in powwow committee at one point, but did we ever come to a resolve on if we were gonna find some way to get cameras there? I remember we said even a fake camera might work, like smile, you're on camera, might deter people from doing stuff too.
So we did put up the signs, and that was about all we were able to do. We never did come to a conclusion as powwow committee to put a camera or put a fake camera. I know we discussed trail cams at one point in time, but I don't think we ever followed through with it. I think the only thing that we did was put up those signs that said "Smile, you're on camera," and it didn't stop the vandalism from happening inside the bathrooms.
All right, so let's get back to security. So Kuwaitan, are you guys able to provide that accommodation for us?
I think, yes, but it would be ideal to know what hours you're looking for. Is it every 2 hours, 24 hours, or is it after 6 p.m.?
More so at nighttime, I think would be okay, but during powwow time too, if we could get somebody to come through. At grand entry, Fridays at 7, Sundays at 1 p.m., or Saturdays at 1 p.m., and Sundays at noon.
So if you could get me the
Actual times? Yep.
I can make sure that we have staff that we can send over, whether it be 1, 2, or 3 teams. But it also, obviously we got to make sure that the gaming floors are taken care of as well.
Okay.
Okay, Aaron.
So one thing that we used to do, and I don't think it's happening anymore, is we used to have people that were camping check in with law enforcement so we knew who was in our community, who was in our environment. And 2 years ago, I know there was a group of people that camped over there, and I asked, did they have to check in with anybody? And the answer was no. And we can't let down our guard on that. You know, we focus on MMIP. I'm doing some work with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. A huge powwow is a perfect opportunity to snatch up a child. So I think that we need to get back to having a checkpoint for anybody that's camping on the grounds should have to check in with law enforcement. I'm not necessarily saying that there should be, I would like it, but like a background check or whatever, but at least if everybody that's there has checked in and law enforcement can account for who all is there. Because after hours, you know, there's people that come to our community that aren't from our community. And perpetrators know how to exploit opportunities to take a child. So I don't know if a conscious decision was made to stop doing that, or if we just got lazy and didn't do it anymore, or what the reason is. But then the other thing is, I would say that security, all the burden shouldn't be on security, because law enforcement also patrols. So I think we just maybe organize a schedule between law enforcement and security. So security probably would be the after hours, because law enforcement doesn't generally work after hours.
Yeah, we got law enforcement on Zoom right now. I assume that's you, Bob?
Yep, that's Bob. And yes, we do provide 24/7 coverage here in the Sioux, so we are patrolling 24/7 during the powwow, and we actually put other extra officers on for overtime during that weekend. To my knowledge, we've never checked in any of the campers. I don't know if the powwow committee in the past maybe maintained a log. I do know that there is some instances where if you're a registered sex offender and you're going to be camping in the area, they would have to check in with us, but that's on kind of them to do that. So I guess I don't know what historically has been done, but we will assist in any capacity that we can.
Tyler, do you want to have that conversation at your committee's level?
Yeah, that's something that I'll bring to the committee. We actually have a committee meeting tomorrow at noon, so
Okay.
We'll talk about it
Let's figure
tomorrow.
out if the committee's supportive of some sort of registration, just to know who's on our grounds. So,
I'm looking
Aaron.
at Lana, and we're both recalling that maybe we did it 1 year, or
I think what Bob just referenced is when we first implemented the Sex Offender Act, I think some sort of notice went in, they were told that if they were on that list, they had to come and register with law enforcement.
so I think everybody that's planning this camp over there should have to go over to law enforcement and just give the name. I mean, I'm not asking law enforcement to do a background check, but I think when they do go to check in, they should say, are you a mandatory reporter, or whatever polite way you can say that? Is there anything that you have to report or whatever? But then we have a list of all the names of who was there. Because if somebody was abducted and we never ever collected any information like that, then we're going to look really stupid that we didn't collect any information on who we're inviting to camp on our reservation. So
How do we track those camping at the casino grounds? I mean, I would assume a similar process. We could be in that mix. I'm not saying that we can't. We've never done it before, so it seems that there should be some kind of a process or something that we're following.
So, I mean, if people are staying at our hotel, we know who they are because they check in.
yeah,
The same as with the RV park. We get.
yes, that's what
we-
you're asking.
We collect information for their reservation.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say, like, if there are people there registered to do some of the dance and opening ceremonies and stuff, would it behoove us to put something encompassing of the whole powwow where people are checking in? Do we do it with the vendors? Because we may have vendors there that need to register as well.
Yep, we have, vendors have to pre-register. They go through a whole process with the committee, having to register, verifying who they are, making sure they're tribal, all that stuff. So we have names, business names, all of that for vendors. Dancers register too, so we have dancers' names. Drums register. So basically everybody who's affiliated with the powwow besides spectators all register. We do have some way to account for all of them.
Is that something that we could also do for campers coming in there, if there are people putting them in places, or is it just kind of first come, first serve as far as sites, or is there any site notifications? I guess I don't ever remember seeing anything noted.
Right, it's more first come, first serve type basis. It's to the left of the powwow grounds, or the northern side of the arena, and it's more of like a rustic first come, first serve basis there. But there is quite a few groups that we do know that I see regularly who camp there, and maybe we can work something out with them to where we can figure out information of people who are staying there.
Aaron.
So that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for law enforcement to be the department that somebody has to check in, because the committee is already, this is all volunteer, right? And I don't think it's a volunteer effort. I think it's an official effort to keep peace and order on our reservation. That's a law enforcement function. So I'm asking that they have to register with law enforcement. It is still first come, first serve. The reason why I'm suggesting they check in with law enforcement is because if somebody has a background that they're afraid that they might be revealed if they check in with law enforcement, they're not likely to, if they know they got to go to law enforcement, they're probably not going to camp, right? And that's what we want. We don't want them on our reservation if they have something that would inhibit them from checking in. So, we're open during the clerk at law enforcement can do it. We can figure out something after hours, but most people that do camp come a day or two early. It's not a volunteer function, it's a law enforcement function.
Any issue, again, talking with your committee about that, Tyler? Laura?
Nope, not at all.
Very good. We okay to move on to cage then? Okay, so can you explain what you're requesting from the cage?
So this is just an all-comprehensive list of everything that we do normally and don't do. That way it's all laid out crystal clear for everybody. This is something that we do every year with the cage. We lay out the payments, exactly what we need, which payouts we need, when we need them. And so this is something that's already in play and function. It's just I wanted to have an all-comprehensive list laid out.
Okay. So can the casino accommodate what they're going to be needing from the cage? Basically just be there to cash checks, right, Tyler?
No, it's a full payout.
Full payout.
Yeah, we
okay.
do all the payouts through the cage. The cage manager usually expects our email here within a couple of weeks when we have everything laid out.
Okay.
So
Dana,
as
Al?
long as you provide that payout listing, they'll have all of the increments ready to go when it comes time to pick up.
Okay. Aaron?
Do they, all right, so because they're Indian people, and they're going from reservation to reservation, do they have to show a state ID, or will the tribal ID be enough to cash it? Well, they're not cashing, they're
The
just being
cage
paid out.
does not issue the payments. We gather the payment, give it to the powwow committee. However, the powwow committee disperses those payments, that's on them, but it's done in cash.
Okay, so the powwow committee signs for the cash? Okay, I got it.
Okay, let's move on to housekeeping. So this is basically, you're requesting that housekeepers help with garbage disposal, and we kind of already had that discussion.
Yep.
Okay, so obviously you guys can utilize your staff for that, not just security guards. All right, so hotel, Tyler, you want to get us started on that?
Yeah, so what we're looking for is a good rate for a hotel to advertise to our people who are coming here. We have called around to all the other hotels, all the other powwows, and we're trying to find a rate similar to them because we feel that our powwow bringing in close to 2,500 people, our hotel should be almost full. We're bringing in a lot of people, so our businesses can hopefully benefit from that as well. So we're looking at trying to get a good hotel rate that we can advertise on our powwow flyer for folks who can come in and book a hotel under a good powwow rate.
How many rooms do we have blocked off for the powwow?
So I have yet to do any type of blocking yet because I want to see what type of room rate I can get as a discounted rate before I went ahead and blocked off a room for the powwow.
So what's a good rate in your opinion? So have you done research, like you mentioned, calling around other tribes, what they provide?
So last year, I worked with, I believe it was Stephanie, and for the block of rooms, and I had called Bay Mills to see what they offer at their hotel for powwow time, and it was around $90, which seems pretty average. Like Keweenaw Bay, their rooms go for right around 100 or less, and they're also a big powwow. Right now, I think last year our room rate wasn't discounted by very much, so I don't believe the hotel was full. I believe even our block of rooms that had that reduced rate wasn't even fully sold out. So.
Okay, so Dana, Al, what's the discounted price on the rooms for that week?
I don't know off the top of my head. There's been no request yet. However, when requests come in, we attempt to do deeper discounts than we do a standard tribal member rate, but it also is contingent on our occupancy of rooms that are already booked for coming in. So it's contingent on how our hotel is trending in their yielding.
Okay, Isaac.
You got to remember, they can only have half the rooms, right? There's 26 down?
There's 130 out of order right now.
And the difference between last year and this year is the rooms are a heck of a lot nicer. I just took a walk through there. They're looking really awesome. So $90 for a room like that, good luck even in a big city. You go anywhere nowadays, it's $300. Doesn't matter where you go. I do a hockey team. We book rooms every weekend, and it's over $300 per room.
I'm nervous about this because it's so close. Do we know what the bookings are like now? Do we have any?
I don't have the information in front of me now.
And then the other question is, what is currently, for the summer, what is the tribal member discount?
It's usually based on the percentage of what we're currently tracking for that time period. So it's not set as a dollar amount, it's set as a percentage.
So like 120,000?
I think it's like a 20% rate.
Okay. So I think I remember, well, not during the summer, but somebody who I helped get a room was probably about 130, 140 with the discount.
Prior to yielding, so prior to our occupancy going up, I want to say we start at 115 starting in June.
Oh, okay.
That's the start of our summer rate. As the hotel books out, we tick those rates up higher. So
Okay,
it
so
really
that's kind
depends on,
of not too far off.
it really depends on the day that you would look at that occupancy and what's currently coming in. The further out that I take a look at it, the better rate that you're able to get.
So for that weekend, if you guys could quickly try to block off some rooms, because I think even aside from just people that come to watch the powwow, the number of dancers and stuff will probably eat up most of the rooms. So we don't want to be without room. So how quickly
Completely
can you
agree,
guys work that
Which is
out?
why the request needs to get to us sooner versus later.
Okay.
Okay, Isaac.
How many rooms are you thinking, Tyler?
To be honest, I'm not sure. Last year at the end of our booking, I called and I think only one room was taken out of our block, maybe two. And I asked people of why that was, and it's too expensive. I have a letter of reference here from all the powwows that are happening this year. Looking at their standard room rate and what they discount their powwows, they're basically in half. Mount Pleasant, $373 a night is their normal rate. Powwow rate is $161. Saturday and Sunday, which is their big days, they dropped it down to $129. That's just for their powwow weekend. Oneida, same thing, regular rate $224. Friday night is $98.
Do you recall the rate that you got last year?
I don't remember, but I think it was 25 to 30% off the normal occupancy rate.
Less than 100 to begin?
I think so. I think it was something like that. Right. I'm not exactly sure what the rate was off the top of my head. I'd have to go look at last year's powwow flyer. But thinking, if we're bringing in that many people, there has to be, we're missing something here, right? If our hotel block rate is not filling up from the hotel, where every other powwow that I know of that's a big powwow that I would go to, their hotels fill up. I mean, Keweenaw Bay has a year-long waiting list for their hotel. So we're missing something here in this transaction that's not correlating of why we're not booking our hotel rooms for our powwow and why we're bringing in so many people and we're not booking hotel rooms. So there's a mix-up in the correlation of what's happening here. So trying to figure out what the issue is basically where I'm at with it. And the first thing I think of is hotel rate. It's not that our campground is completely packed because there's tons of room in our campground for the powwow too. So we're missing something here. I know RV park is big. I know a lot of people fill up the RV park over there. They bring their RVs in for the powwow weekend. But there's still something that we're not clicking here.
So I can absolutely take a look at the hotel rate that you were quoted last year as well as what we're trending this year and see if we can't make it a little more aggressive. However, I will also say that in the future, the sooner you get to us, the better.
Right.
Okay, so Tyler, get with them, try to figure out how many rooms you need, try to figure out a good compromise on the price. Obviously, the casino needs to make money, but we don't want unused rooms either. So, I mean, that's a service and it's an amenity for people to come to our powwow and to make that travel a little bit more affordable. So get with them and keep us in the loop on that. Okay, so let's move on to Tanglewood. You're requesting some golf courts to transport elders back and forth from their vehicles?
Yes, so that request has gone in. Everything is good. The only other issue that we're having with the golf courts is transportation of the actual golf carts. Last year, we had construction take care of that for us, and we were unaware of the costs associated with it, and we got hit with a bill in the back end after they billed us for it, and we were not aware that that was going to happen. So we're looking at trying to find ways to get the golf carts transported, but also they need the carts back before 10 o'clock on Monday. Monday, traditionally for the cultural department, that's a day off after that long weekend. So we're just looking at trying to get some help in order to transport these golf carts. Getting them down to Naganagizik, we can handle that. We have a couple trailers where we can tow them down. It's getting them back to Tanglewood before 10 a.m. on Monday is the issue.
How many golf carts did they use last year, Tyler?
We're requesting 8.
8 of them?
Yep.
Okay. Do you recall how much the bill was?
Not off the top of my head, no.
All right, so Mr. Conley, you're over Sioux Tribe Construction as well. Can you work with him on that? And, you know, if we need to minimize costs, I mean, I have a truck, I have a trailer, I can load them on there, so just let me know.
Will do.
Rob McGrory's volunteering to be a driver.
Okay, let's move on to purchasing. So you need some dumpsters?
Yep.
I do pretty good at that, just so you guys know.
We told them no last year, too.
I was allowed to when I was a youth worker.
We've already been working with purchasing on this. This is something that, again, we just put it on the comprehensive list. It's already taken care of.
Taken care of? Okay, good.
Yep.
Environmental.
Yeah, this one is also taken care of as well.
Okay, casino executive.
This we're just asking for an executive to sit on our powwow committee and maybe come to 2 or 3 meetings within the year, just so that way when we have requests like this, we can work with them and just make it a more smooth process.
What do you say, Al? Yeah, all right, very good. First aid booth?
Yeah, and we're again requesting the health center to bring their portable health RV trailer that they have.
Already in the works? You already made the request?
No, I haven't made the request yet. I haven't reached out to them. We're running behind this year because we were waiting for the budget, and so everything's kind of in a crunch time right now.
Okay, yeah, just put in that request as soon as possible so they can be made aware of that. And I mean, you guys operate on a volunteer basis. Obviously, we want our powwow to function as strongly as possible, and all that weight isn't going to fall just on your shoulders. So it's a team effort. We can spread it out amongst the tribe. So I appreciate you coming here, and if we need to assign more duties, we can do that. So this would be a good start, though, right? All right. Anything else to add from the board, staff, anybody? All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tyler.
We'll be
Thank you,
back
Laura.
here in a couple weeks
right.
to invite you guys to the powwow and Chiefs Feast.
All right, next item that we have on our agenda is Government Human Resources, Proposed Hiring Policy Amendments, and Quarter Policy Review. So if you guys want to come up and get set up.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your patience getting my screen up there, screen sharing. We're looking forward to the opportunity of being here today on the Governmental and Enterprise Policies and Procedures Project. I'm Cheryl Nolan, the HR Director, and I'm going to start with a quick introduction here for everybody. And then the thought is to, once we do the introduction and some note takers here, I would like to go down through in that order of the, you have this agenda in your packet, in the order of hiring policies, which I'll kick off first, and then the next part of the policy review group, the first quarter. If that works with everybody, we're going to go on this agenda, policy review by order. Does that sound good? All right, thank you. To my left here, I have Joe Starnes. He's our employee relations specialist. He is our administrative note taker. Say hi, Joe. And then we have Ashley Samuelson over here on our far right. She is our HR generalist projects, key part of the policy review group, along with Joe. They do a lot of the administrative coordinating and important part of the team. And then we have Ryan Mills on our right. I think we all know him. With our legal team, I have to give a shout out with legal and the HR team in front of you. It's a team effort work group, a lot of work behind the scenes. So thank you for that, Ryan and Josh. And then on my right, obviously, is Jeff Rogers, our employee relations supervisor. So as I kick off today, I'm going to go ahead and start the first part of the policy review, which is the hiring policies. Now, what we have is red line versions with us, and the hiring policies themselves, you would have already seen these in prior board packets. The hiring policies themselves, there are 4 critical ones. It was just getting on the agenda and rescheduling. When we look at the hiring policies back in January at a board meeting, HR was instructed to bring forward as soon as possible those specific hiring policies that were creating a barrier to our hiring process and for a more quicker, efficient approach to it. So we did that, myself and the work group here behind the scenes for the hiring policies. There's 4 that I'm going to talk about that we put together. 2 of them we updated and have had implemented behind the scenes since that January board meeting and directive from this board. So if there's any questions at this moment, I'll break through each one of these hiring policies in front of us that are going to address the barriers that we reacted on and implemented since January. Any questions on that at this point? So one of them, when we look at the hiring policies on the agenda in front of you, we identified right away there are 2 existing policies that were in place that were creating a barrier for our hiring process. Number 1 of them is the drug-free workplace. What we did with that specifically is right now, based on the drug-free workplace policy, majority of applicants were getting a pre-employment drug screening. We're asking the board for support and approval on the red line version. Per policy, the only applicants that should be involved in the pre-employment drug screening are specifically those that are covered positions and safety sensitive. Right now, governmental and enterprise, well, in the past, it's all of the applicants. By implementing and supporting the drug-free workplace policy where only pre-employment is done for covered and safety sensitive, that's going to make a substantial improvement to our hiring practice and as far as efficiency and flow. Go ahead. I was just going to say, any questions on that part?
So is this just catching up to what the board already voted on and directed? Because the board limited
Yes.
the pre-employment, because I know somebody who just got hired on a position, and she told me that she had to fill out paperwork for a background check, and I'm like, before I left office, the board voted to eliminate that. So it's just the policies haven't caught up to the board action to eliminate the pre-employment?
They have not caught up to it, but I want to make sure that you had just made a mention of background check. This is only the
No,
pre-employment.
I mean, I'm sorry, it was
Yeah.
for the drug pre-screen.
Yes, our policy didn't reflect it. We're asking for that approval and concurrence to make that happen immediately, only covered and safety sensitive.
Okay, so one thing that I think we should do going forward is when we get edicts from on high or directives, declarations, proclamations, whatever it is that the board does, it should automatically authorize the change to the policies to match that. And just, I would say, within 30 days of us passing something, HR should just come back with an administrative compliance with that, a procedure that comports with that policy change that the board made. Because it doesn't make any sense that three years later, we're having to pass the policies. And I know the reason why is because every time the team came to the board looks at it, I think they get tired of it, and they send you guys away and then don't make any changes. So I'm willing to vote on a full swoop of changes now.
Yes.
And then if we find out we made a mistake and need to go back and correct it, then let's go back and correct it piecemeal. But, you know, how many years are we waiting now? 5 or 6 years?
Right.
Mike?
To go along that same lines, I would think that whenever the board passes a law that changes this, that policy or not, if the law has been changed, there should be a point where it's a moot point then. Like the board changed this by law, this is no longer policy. I mean, not that we have to come back and try to play catch up. If we change the law, then it should just mute this out. It should be void. You know, this is no longer applicable due to tribal law resolution passed on such and such date, and it mutes out that portion of the policy. Because I agree, we shouldn't be having to wait to play catch up. And you guys do get bumped a lot, so it gets bumped down the road. But at the same token, if we pass a law, I don't see any need for the policy, like if it's in direct disregard of that law, it's mute. It's a mute policy at that point. So I don't know if we would need to play catch up as long as the policies reflect that, hey, this, according to tribal law, this got changed, it no longer applies. So, but in, you know, in theory, it would be cleaner if we did it all at one fell swoop, but when we don't do that and it's not all clean and all that, I do think that tribal law supersedes policy, and that you can't say, well, it's still policy, we're still going to do it. Well, no, there was a tribal law, so I do think tribal law supersedes it, and at some point it just voids it, and we don't have to go back and play catch up. It's just voided because tribal law superseded it. So.
Yes, and I appreciate that. Another reason we're here today is with our work group here. There are policies, our existing policies. Now, prior, we would have to go to the policy review group and then come back in front of the board. But I know all of us, and feel free to jump in at any point, there are mechanisms in here that we can update a policy such as this, because you're looking at your subject matter experts in front of you, right? So we're tied to the flow of the policy review group, but I'm comfortable with this group and the subject matter experts to literally take the, not all applicants anymore. It's the covered and safety sensitive, right? So that's why we're here talking today with the board. I'm confident you would trust us to do such things and then keep you informed and come back to the board for final approval, because it is a policy, right? Right now, we have the policies going to the policy review group. And I think that for the drug-free workplace, that's the only section.
So in a nutshell, we're just trying to eliminate barriers so people can get hired quicker.
Yes.
So what they're basically saying is if the board changes policy, just enact it, you know what I mean, rather than years later come forward. Because I mean, if we are trying to speed up how quickly we can hire people, you know, requiring every single employee in governmental to get a pre-employment drug screen is excessive. I mean, and it's not because we want to have our employees on drugs, just because if it's predictable, I mean, you can either clear your system or you can bring in someone else's urine or synthetic urine. And we still have policies in place to where if someone is suspected to be under the influence after they have their foot in the door with employment with us, that they can be required to go to HR and take a drug screen at that time. So absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep, let's move on.
So with that being said, when we look at let's go right into the recruitment and selection policy itself. It was prior, I think, 5 sentences. It was one paragraph, and what we had done, and we took action from our last board meeting on the barriers to the hiring process with the chief executive officer and administrative function. We internally, with how long positions were out there based on how long it took an individual to interview, such as a hiring manager, that one we did implement internally with our administration and exec office. And now there is a time frame requirement that if you have an entry-level position or a non-exempt or even an exempt, with the exception of your executive, but all those positions, you have 2 weeks to notify HR, including myself and the employment supervisor, when you're going to do those interviews. There is an email notification that went out. It was directed at a prior direct reports for governmental. If you have a position open and you have qualified applicants, what I've done internally along with executive on the administrative level, you are notified via email. If you are sitting out there and you're not doing interviews with qualified applicants already screened, you have 10 business days to at least schedule or conduct those interviews and get that hiring process finalized. By starting this back in the 1st of February, this process on recruitment and selection, it adds the time frames in there of a 2-week process, with the exception of executive level, including reporting mechanisms that go who's delaying, who's not filling positions, who's not hiring. Those now go into my monthly board reporting, and executive office has been instrumental on contacting that hiring manager. Get your position filled, get your interviews done. If you are busy or you are out on training, then you assign a representative. I can tell you, since doing that internal process, it was a 50% immediately getting our interviews done, making it happen, because you already have your packet of screened applicants so that are qualified. So I can tell you from that reporting and monitoring and the support of executives, it's been a huge difference, huge difference. Now, obviously not executive level positions, even though we track them, don't misinterpret that on how long they're taking. But even at the direct reports meeting for governmental, that day when I gave the presentation, before I got downstairs to the office, there was 3 or 4 hiring managers that were delaying. They just didn't have time to do interviews, just didn't have time. They got the email notification. Some of them came right to HR and completed their interviews. So that has been a very positive impact on the barriers to hiring process. So that's what we did with recruitment and selection. We put a time frame on there for the hiring managers to look at their qualified applicants and start that process, complete it, and get your person hired. Because that was one of our biggest delays, is not having time to interview and such. I'll add to that too, if they didn't take action and schedule their own interviews, we got a select date from them and we scheduled their interviews for them. So any questions on that one?
Just quickly, one, glad to hear it. I'm glad that that change makes things happen. Are we keeping track of like the benchmark then of how long it takes our normal, like, do we do it by division? Do we do it by, like, if we're keeping track of that, that's a useful tool. It helps encourage them to get hires in faster. That way takes away the blame game of who's responsible for what.
Right.
But as a benchmark tool, we should know, hey, it takes governmental as a whole this long from posting a position to this long getting somebody in a position. So are we keeping track of that?
Yeah, I've been keeping track of that as the HR director since my time in the position, and I submitted in my monthly.
Okay.
And I also, anytime you want specific data like that, including what native preference or any of that, I can accommodate that reporting. We do have an internal database for that.
Okay. And have we seen that's obviously dropping then because of these other report?
Pardon?
Like that time frame, that benchmark's gone down?
Yes, specifically this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions on that one?
Yeah, Aaron.
I would say to close the loop, because you said you're providing feedback to the executive chain of command, if we could require that the executive chain of command put in their report to the board when these are coming in, and because it's silly that you should be having to babysit and, telling on them, right? Because they're not filling positions that are needed. That's just foolish, but they're budgeted. They've been determined to be necessary. That's why they were budgeted. And it doesn't matter what is happening in their life while they're not filling positions, that's their job. That's why they get paid as a supervisor to do their job. So, but that report information that you're providing to the respective executive and the
Monthly,
branch or
right.
chain of command or whatever, should then also put it in a report and bring it to the board of directors. So,
Yep.
Okay, we can move on to the next.
The next one that are the ones that are, there were 2 new policies written. We did not have this documented policy and procedure in the past. I know the actual policy and procedure for writing a job description and posting it and using standardized job descriptions so that we just don't write them. And for a friend of a friend, I'm just being honest up here today. The development of a job description policy and a wage review policy, those are done. When you look at those are they're done for review at your end. There's 2 brand-new policies. We didn't have these before, the wage review process and the job description policy. Those are both really good policies that will provide consistency, internal equity, development of standardized job descriptions. Those are in your packets today. In the wage review process for all of those, they have mechanisms built in for internal equity. Those that, if a position is being hired and it's outside of the policy for an exception to it, those are also noted within a reporting mechanism. Any questions on those 2?
I have something to add to those 2. You'll see, I think, in your packet some of my comments on the job description one, but also this would apply to the wage review. One thing we've not, at least in recent history, done is have the ability to do a wage review or change a job description for a team member who's sitting in that position. But the reality in 2025 is things change faster in the business world sometimes than we can change our job descriptions. So we have language in here that this job description policy was originally worded to apply to all new job descriptions, but we want it to apply to all job descriptions. We want HR with the department directors, the key employees, and the hiring managers to be able to, as market trends change, depending on what department you're in, the ability to change that job description to meet our needs without having that position to be vacant. And under the way we've been currently operating in the past maybe decade, Cheryl can correct me, but for quite a while now, we've been operating where we can't change job descriptions, we can't do wage reviews for people that are in that position until that position is vacated. And then we go through all the process of updating the job description, but sometimes we need to do it sooner for business reasons. We have that flexibility now built into the this new job description policy.
Right, and we talk a lot about that, Ryan and I, and the group here, more so Ryan and I lately, we talk a lot about that because when you're looking at updating a job description while it's occupied, we're coming right around the corner out of a compensation classification study that should have updated those job descriptions. So this is a topic that Ryan and I are always talking about behind the scenes. You know, if you're looking at a job description itself and updating it while people are in it, that's going to be a big impact. We just completed some class studies where that was supposed to be done and it wasn't consistently, so here we are.
Yeah, so the comp study, like Cheryl said, fix some of that, but we want the ability for HR to be able to better analyze when things need to change outside of like a 3-year cycle of comp studies or a 3-year cycle of job descriptions. There may be a time where a hiring manager comes to HR and says, I need help change this job description because I hired this individual and now we realize that their duties are vastly different than our job description. And the catch-all of other duties assigned only goes so far. So we just want an ability to be able to review that when the department needs might justify it.
So here's the thing, all right. So the old way that people used to manipulate the system was to add all these additional duties that kind of didn't really have anything to do with the job or weren't necessary to the job. If the professional position dictates those changes and add-ons, that makes sense. But really, I think the issue is keeping pace with grade and step over time. So what we need is, and it's a big step to get you to the market value in the beginning, right? But then what we need to do, and we used to do this in the old days, and it's funny, I'm not going to make it sound like we were really good at it in the old days, but we used to, like, I'm talking like back in the 90s, is we used to pass a weight and step grid that automatically showed the adjustments, and then the appropriations, if the appropriations were there and the funding was there, then you could administratively make the change without having to come back to the board. The board at one point distrusted the administration and stopped supporting that. But at some point, to accommodate that, fluctuations in between, so that if you don't do it, then you're not keeping pace with the cost of living.
Absolutely.
And then you end up having this big giant reform that you have to do every couple of years. So it's a matter of structuring or approving a wage and step grid that will anticipate. We should be able to do that because we have COLA built in now. So, in the inflationary factor, we should be able to project out what that looks like and then pass every 3 years a wage and step grid that is in place, and then administratively, as long as the money's appropriated, then those changes can be made according to policy. So.
Right, and this policy in front of you has the recommendation to update the full spectrum of a comp class study every 3 years, right? And then during that time that we're in right now, because we're just coming out of one from 2024, excuse me, you would actually start by percentage and take the mass different job descriptions before this January coming up. Does that make sense? Prior policy had job descriptions 20% to be looked at and adjusted every year. That's not going to be aggressive enough to have that clean slate. So this one is looking at, because we didn't have it done, this one's looking at a comp class study every 3 years. So if you do the math, you would start looking at your job descriptions to do a successful internal comp class study. You'd start January 1st coming up because that's 2026. And you have a year to have a clean 3 years out is 2027. You would have all next year to do a accurate internal comp class study with all of that. So that's also in the policy itself and procedure.
Mike, then Kim.
Just a quick question under your wage review policy. Under the policy section 3, it says there's a 3B general policy, but then it gets down to number 8 where it says internal equity, and then it kind of defines what internal equity is, but it's under the policy section. So is that managers are supposed to strive for internal equity? Managers are supposed to, it seems like there's something missing as far as a policy statement there. It seems more like it's saying just what internal equity is, but it doesn't seem like a policy statement. So I guess I'm trying to understand that what
Mike,
what
will
the
you
intent
guide
is.
me back to that specific spot now that I have it up on the screen?
Sure.
You had what section again, please?
Under wage review policy, there's a general policy under, it's 3, and then 3B, number 8. It's the very last thing on the page. On the second page, I guess, of wage policy review.
That's just me going too far.
Number 8, under general
So
policy.
internal equity refers to the comparison of pay between people in the same company within the same position title.
I guess what's the policy statement there? I understand what internal equity is. I'm glad
Right,
we're
so-
reiterating it there. What are we trying to accomplish by stating it right there as a policy?
So each part of this, so a better way to define Section 8 is internal equity. It gives you a definition of what it is. It refers to the comparison, between more than one individual at the same job title. So if you had a dentist, and say you have 5 dentists on right now, and you do a wage review to bring someone else on, there's going to be a comparison. We run an internal data to show what your existing people with the same title, what they make.
No,
experience.
I understand what it means, fraternal equity and all that. The policy itself, it just says that they'll refers to the comparison of, so I guess I'm missing why it's just sitting there like we're going to do every effort to accomplish that, I guess would be more of a policy. Unless I'm missing it. It just seems like it's a definition.
Yeah, it is, and the policy is the definition. Internally, you'll have the procedures to outline it more
Okay.
in detail in your actual procedures that are going to follow the policy.
But to answer your question, Mike,
No, go ahead.
correct me if I'm wrong, Cheryl, I think the intent is to try to have internal equity with these like positions if they have the same experience and they're in their same position.
And that was intended, I understand that. I just wish we would have had a little better of a way to encompass that when it came to that, rather than just saying, this is what internal equity is. I guess that's what I was looking for, is that language.
Well, that's why
right
we're
there.
here today,
Yep.
right, with the red
So
line.
if we
and
can
that's
include what he
perfect.
just said right there, that would be
Yeah,
awesome. I don't even know what he
I
just
made the
said.
note.
I'm pretty, I think I already sent it to the team, similar to along those lines, but we'll get it incorporated into their next draft.
I think it's actually, thank you.
I don't know if I'm reading this incorrectly. It's on the first part of the job description policy. It's in the first section, purpose, where it says job descriptions cannot be updated or modified while occupied by an active team member. However, a job description shall be reviewed and modified based on operational needs during the time a position becomes vacant. So this policy's never existed before?
No, not the job description policy itself.
Okay, I guess I just find it weird how there's been so many employees that have been told your job description can't get done because in policy we can't until it's vacant. There was not even a policy. I mean, is it stated somewhere else in a different policy that I'm not aware of?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
The board mandated, this was one of B.J. Hopkins' gifts forever and ever. A board mandated that job descriptions cannot be rewritten unless the board approves them.
So, yeah, whatever policy we're gonna have to obviously look at changing that, but, so is this purpose, I mean, does that have to be changed? Because maybe I'm reading it wrong and maybe I'm just haven't had enough coffee this afternoon, or any at all. It says, from reading those two sentences, is that it's still stating a job description review can't be done until it is vacant, which I thought that we were trying to make it to where it could be reviewed even if it was not vacant yet.
I'll answer
Yeah.
this, Cheryl.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yes, we are. So
You'll be able to see it.
part of what's happened here, right, is HR got bumped several times to, I think Mike maybe said it, and due to internal changes and different things that were happening, the legal department sent some comments that are not fully incorporated. The comments are here, but some of our red lines aren't fully incorporated yet. But the intent is, that's why I tried to jump in earlier, the intent is to not have it so that they had to be vacant. I don't remember my language offhand that I sent earlier, but we want to do it when there's operational needs, full stop. And I highlighted it here, it's not in color on your version, but yeah, that job descriptions cannot be updated or modified while occupied by an active team member. The legal department's recommendation is to strike that language. We are advising that we should be able to update job descriptions on an operational needs basis, not only when a position becomes vacant. Sometimes we have positions that don't become vacant for long stretches of time, and it doesn't make business sense to have to wait necessarily to update a job description. So that language is going to change. This doesn't.
I thought that's what I heard you say, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to be sure that what you said just hasn't been incorporated into this yet.
That's correct.
That's correct. These are, and actually your little red lines up there on the right, Ryan, but you can't read it. So these are our working red line versions today. And with that statement also, if we are going to look at updating them while there's individuals in them, is to have that tight mechanism and time frame in there to do such. Otherwise, I'm going to get 100 phone calls tomorrow saying, can you update my department's job descriptions tomorrow? But I think we're both, we as a group are on the right path. He does have his comments in there. I should have. You should be able to see the red line versions, but yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
I recommended to HR to, even though some of these changes that the legal department is advising haven't yet been incorporated in what's in your packet, because the HR department had gotten bumped like 3 workshops in a row, I advise, at this point, I thought it was better to bring at least what they had in front of the boards to start getting some direction, because then we could also change it based on whatever direction we get here today. But we kept sitting on it, kept getting bumped, and I wanted to get something in front of the board so we could at least have some feedback and some eyes on the current drafts.
Exactly. So that's why we're here today, right, is to get the valuable feedback that you have on the red line version in front of you.
Okay,
Thank
Mike,
you.
then Aaron.
All right, to go along that same statement, that the same purpose there under job descriptions is that what Ryan stated was actually maybe the language we might want in there is updates to job descriptions might be based on operational needs. Because I do think if you put in here every single time it becomes vacant, you're going to have to update it, and I think that's going to be too problematic
Yeah.
on any program manager, especially with a high turnover area, that they have to reconfirm a job description or have to reevaluate a job description every single time a position becomes vacant. I think is going to be too burdensome. So what he stated is based on operational needs. I think that is key. I think that's the language that should be used probably throughout here.
And even to go one step further with that, another report that gets generated out is we need to start looking at our succession planning. There's 27 individuals that in the next year or two in succession planning, just in the governmental division alone. I know those jobs, you're talking 30-plus years, 25 years. I mean, we were all at the luncheon this year. We've got some 40-year employees. I mean, those job descriptions are probably the oldest that we have. You know, we've got some succession planning reporting, and we need to really start having that conversation too, especially with the years of service in the company from these individuals. Those job descriptions, there's a couple I can't even find, you know, because you're talking 1970 or when we first started, so.
Okay, Aaron.
So I like the idea of having to be able to change the job description as the organizational needs suggest. But I think there needs to be a procedure established to flow from this so we can limit what those times are and what the needs of the organization are. Because in the past, without naming names, I remember how people used to get raises. Somebody would go in and meet with Bernard, and they would kiss up a little bit and walk out with a raise, and then brag about their raise, and somebody else would dust off their position description, go and suck up to the chairman again. Sometimes it was over drinks at the Signatures Lounge or wherever, and that's how people used to get raises. And also people would add stuff to their job description, like coaching the golf team, or it's like, that has nothing to do with your job. So I don't think that any position description should be changed for any reason if it doesn't relate to their position. And it also should be a necessary function, not just because they'd like it, or they went out and got additional education, and now they want to add their education to the job description. If it didn't take that education to get that job in the first place, that additional education is not necessary. You know, and I joke with Kim about this, is I got a PhD, but if you look at the wage studies for people that have PhDs that are not faculty, it's meaningless. It doesn't get you additional salary, and nor should it. The position needs should dictate what you get paid. So I would say I'd support this, but I would also suggest a procedure that spells out what the organizational needs are.
So each policy in front of you does have a procedure, internal procedures to go and further define under each policy. If you would like to see each procedure attached to each policy, we can do that going forward. We have them. We're only reviewing the actual policy itself right now. But
Recommendation for expediency would pass the policy and leave it to the administration to promulgate the procedures as long as they're consistent with the policy, but then provide the board with a full compendium of all of those changes that were made. And if the board feels it necessary to bring them back forward, then bring them back forward. I don't think we need to delay that.
yeah, they have procedures, each one. Thank you.
Okay, we can keep going, Cheryl.
Okay. So at that portion of it, let me stop screen sharing here. Those are the first four for the hiring policies themselves. Now we will convert over and we'll give an update on the actual overall policy review. back in, Jeff will speak to most of this with the agenda in front of us, but back earlier on, HR and legal were instructed from the board to bring back the policy review, the entire governmental enterprise policy procedure manual, and break it down into 4 quarters. And where we left off with the board review was the first quarter of policy and procedures. So behind the scenes, you have an executive policy review group under governmental and enterprise, and we're going to start discussing each one underneath section 2, starting with acting and interim appointment policy. This one itself has been in front of the board, and it was tabled due to what compensation are we going to vote on together for the actual interim policy itself. I will put it on the screen for Jeff unless you want to.
I'm not.
Okay, I'll get this one. Okay, so Jeff, go ahead and kick them off on the first quarter.
Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and take it from here. As Cheryl was saying, the act and interim appointment policy was presented already we left off with 3 percentages to choose from. Option 1 was 15%, option 2 was 20%, and option 3 was 50% of the mid-range, or of the min range of the vacant position. That's where we left off prior. Since then, this was brought to PRG, and it was suggested that we take out acting and just call it the interim appointment policy and eliminate any language in there that references acting, as it's pretty much both one and the same. I've also since taken out the references to EDC and casino, and this is all strictly applicable to governmental team members at this point. So some of the language in there needs to be taken out yet, but all in all, it's pretty much we still have the 3 percentages, and we've eliminated the acting portion of it to simplify things a little bit. Ryan, I don't know if there's anything else you can think of that we discussed in PRG last time to add to that.
No, that was pretty succinct. I'll just a little more context for the acting and the interim. Right now in our current policy we have 2 definitions because they do sort of function differently. Our current policy basically mirrors the Fair Labor Standards Act because we voluntarily comply with it. So we have kind of borrowed their definitions. This is not following Fair Labor Standards. This is doing our own thing, which is fine. We're not bound to FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. But in this draft, the acting appointment and the interim appointment, their functions are identical. There's no differentiation in them. So the meeting we had internally was if they're the same definition, we don't need them both times. It can just be an interim appointment or acting or whatever definition we want. So that's what Jeff was referring to there. Otherwise, yeah, I don't really have.
I'm frozen.
I don't really have any other comments except that I would want, if we're going to do something like this that's different than FLSA, I would want to at some point help HR kind of do a review of other areas where we voluntarily follow or don't follow FLSA, because we do have resolutions that say we will follow it. And so if we start doing stuff vastly different, which is fine, we can do that as a tribe. I'd want to just kind of do a review of all of our policies and see where it might be appropriate to do something different as well.
Okay, Rob has a question or comment.
I just want to know if you guys have talked about any procedures or potential policy for when a position is vacated and then it's not filled, but the duties of the position are kind of divided amongst people within the division, because that's been reported to me a few times that's happened, and they're like, hey, we've been picking up we each took on extra duties, but there's no official appointment, and so nobody received any additional pay. And, my thought is if the duties are still there, obviously, and people are picking them up, and we would provide additional pay had one person done, we need to find a way to compensate if we're adding things to multiple people's jobs. So in one of the instances I heard, it was divided amongst 3 people. So what do you do in that? Do you just say, well, we divided amongst you 3 and you get nothing? I don't think that's right. So I think we need to kind of brainstorm a policy to cover a situation like that. Or if we just don't allow it to happen and say you have to appoint one person to comply with the policy, one way or the other, we can't be stacking work on top of people's regular job duties without providing them an increase in pay.
So I'm wondering if that would involve during the process of a restructure or elimination of position, or how that would be that you're taking a position and divvying it up between 3 different people.
Well, I think it was just within a department. I heard about it twice, so it doesn't happen often. Or maybe it does, and I only heard about it twice. But one of them, well, I don't know if I should say exactly where it was, because I don't want to get anyone in trouble for telling me. But
we don't need to.
But one of them was where a specific department, one of them was within the casino and one of them was within government. And they said, hey, we've been out without our boss for X amount of time, and we all kind of just divided the duties amongst us. So it spread out amongst multiple people, and that made me think as well, if we appointed someone interim, they would receive an increase for doing those extra duties. You guys should receive them too.
So Rob, sorry, there are, under our current policies, there are ways that we could address that. I don't think from what I've seen, we haven't really operated this way, but our policies would allow for maybe like an acting. If you have it spread out over multiple team members, it might be hard to figure out. Maybe there's multiple acting positions, but there's a vacant position, and now the workload is spread over several positions instead of that one that was taking that on. We have the ability in our current policies to make those team members on a temporary basis, the acting whatever. Well, we'll use legal department where if we needed to, we could make someone an acting and a senior attorney to try and get them a pay bump because they're taking on extra duties because now the workload is spread out more. Our current policies allow for that. I don't know that we've ever really done that, but we do have that ability right now. But I have been thinking about this as well, of building out some policy. I haven't talked to Shayla yet to allow maybe some kind of at least temporary bump to people in those situations where maybe there's a director position or a manager position that's vacant for long periods of time, and so the workload necessarily has to be spread out over multiple team members, and they're taking on duties that they otherwise wouldn't. I haven't put pen to paper yet, but our policies do somewhat allow to do that, though we've never really pulled that trigger on making people acting, except for maybe like interim positions that are higher level executive positions, but we can do that now. And I want to build out even a better system, hopefully in the future, to cover those systems.
Right, so.
Aaron.
I don't think the current policies allow for a pay adjustment, though.
If we'd have to officially make that team member the acting whatever. So if we have 2 team members who are now doing the job of one manager, we'd have to temporarily change their job title as they're acting blank manager, because they are doing the manager's job. We'd have to make them acting under our acting appointment provision in our policies.
Compensation goes with it.
Acting can get 5% bump under our current policies. It's temporarily because you're acting in that position.
Okay.
So we've never done it that way, Aaron, but
we used to have
it's allowable.
Practice of doing that. We used to have a practice of doing that.
Yeah, I think we fell away from that.
At some point, I won't name that former board member again, but at some point, that was brought to the table, and the interim appointment was intended to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to get the board's permission anytime there was a pay adjustment. Because that is what we used to do, a 5% for interim.
Mm-hmm.
So But it seems like what Rob's asking for, and I support this, but I also want to be careful that we don't go too far, is there should be some ability, if your position and you're being called upon to fill in for somebody else's full-time position, if it's affected by some percentage of their FTE, then that should trigger something. Also, if there's a vacancy, there should be a timeline by which that position has to be filled. And if it's not filled within a certain time period, maybe this would get the managers to get off their, whatever, is if we had a sunset. If a position that has been budgeted and approved is not filled for, 3 months, whatever, or 6 months, if there's no attempt to fill it, then it should be sunset. And then it can't be filled until you come back and get permission. That would definitely make them move a little quicker to try to fill it, and then it won't then require distribution of those duties off to other people who right now aren't getting compensated for it. I also will say, I don't think it happens a lot. I don't think there's a lot of those duties that are reassigned out a lot. I don't think that's really happening too much. But if it is happening, it should require a PAF.
Yeah, and that's where the interim and the acting itself comes into play, right? And then I'm going to stand right at the very beginning of it. Why are you not posting that vacancy? Why are you letting your team members, 3 of them, take on additional duties? Unless it's eliminated, grant ended, those are the only 2 ways that HR is notified, but then get it posted. And during that time,
Former
our
CEO used to say, and tell
Yeah.
people, clarify to people,
Yeah.
as soon as you get a letter of resignation from somebody, you post it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it takes 3 months, sometimes it takes longer. We need every moment to be able to look at and try to recruit somebody to fill that position. So you don't have to wait. I think where they get tripped up is where they haven't been paying attention to the evolving position over the years, and then they have to rewrite the position. Then they got to reach out to HR. They don't know how to rewrite a position. They have to have HR handhold them on how to rewrite a position, and that delays everything.
So that process has gotten a lot better over time, working closely with the hiring manager and our internal process. So if I see a letter of resignation because, or they tell us that one is coming down, they have to list on the request to post who's vacating the position. Then at that time, and I see each one, then either post it or now's the perfect time to update your job description while it's vacant, because that person that resigned has been in there for 20, 30 years. But those internal mechanisms are in there. Then post it. Then get off.
Is there a requirement when somebody resigns for the department to notify HR immediately?
Not at this moment.
That needs to change. Because if you're giving 30 days notice, they should have to notify HR the moment the person submits their letter. And then we should accept their letter. We should prepare the term sheet. The term sheet should be dated for the date that they're exiting the organization. Then we should post the position immediately, start the requisition process for posting it immediately.
Okay, we can keep going.
Any questions on this? So back to the interim and acting one in front of us is looking at the decision of what composition or compensation. Last time we were tabled, we had 3 different options to bring back to the board. So right now, we're at a 5%. And Jeff, what are the 3 options in front of us? It's 15 at our last board workshop.
It's 15, 20, sorry, it's 15, 20, and 50%.
So I assume you guys want some direction on this?
50% of the min of that position is how it's worded right now. So like whatever position you're filling, whatever that min is in our pay scale, you'll get a percentage.
Right now, it's
add-on.
5%.
Yeah, well, right now it's 5%, or if you're interim, you go to the min of the position you're filling. That's FLSA standard, and that's what we have in our policies. Yeah.
So are you guys asking for direction from the board as far as what to put in this for when we vote?
I think we left off with the percentages. The board discussed those percentages. We had presented this before at a workshop, and actually we brought it for a vote, and it was tabled.
So again, are you looking for direction from the board, what percentage to put in the policy?
Yes.
Okay, do you have a recommendation?
15.
Okay. So let's have a discussion about that.
Is it 50% of the min?
It's the percentage of the min range of the vacant
Okay.
position to be filled.
Okay, that sounds fair.
Is anyone opposed to that, considering our current budget crunch? I would be fine with 15. I don't want to get into a bidding war with people either. So we good with 15, guys? Start off with that. We can change it down the line if we need to.
You're still saving.
And you increased what it was originally at by 3 times. So you went from 5 to 15. Okay, let's put 15 in there, and the board can always motion to amend it when we vote on it.
Yes, person left, yeah. Got it, thank you.
Okay, we can keep going?
Appeal?
Okay. The next one that we're looking at is appeal. This appeal, transfer, and introductory, those 3 policies, and as well as due process, there's some issues that we identified through a couple of hearings, appeal hearings, and there's an issue with conflicting information in the policies relating to what's considered introductory and not introductory, and whether somebody can appeal a termination, and what their employment status is when they transfer to a new position. So those things we're trying to work out with these 3 policies. The appeal policy, I'm trying to think what we did at the.
That's when you had Ryan that we had shot over on the appeal, if you want to.
Right. I know Ryan was looking at some stuff to change on it in addition, as far as composition and so forth. But I think we went through and made some changes in here to alleviate the conflict that it has with the introductory period policy.
Can I jump in for a second, Jeff?
Yeah.
So these policies in front of you, they're part of the quarter one, which is why they're here. But I would like more time with the appeal, due process, separation, transfer policy, introductory period, because I want to potentially put in front of the board, at least with the appeal process, some what might be considered maybe drastic is not the word, big changes. And one of the things we're workshopping is overhauling our appeals process and the composition of the appeal board, and whether we want to propose to the board removing the board of directors from the process.
Aaron.
So I think it's time that we do that. Just real quick, the history of why we put the board in there in the first place. When I first got on the board, I got to be careful how I say this. When I first got on the board, there was a segment of employment in the tribe that turned over 1/3 of all of our employment annually. We were paying $3 to $5 million a year in unemployment compensation for the discretion to just fire people without any procedures. And to his credit, you mark this down, when Fred Paquin got elected, we got elected at the same time, and he was in a union at one point with his job as a law enforcement officer. And he was like, this is crazy. People can't just fire people because they don't like the way they look today. There has to be some kind of policy. We didn't have any policy in 1996, 1997 at all. And so we forced like an appeal process, the board did, and then because there was no due process, Fred and I voted to put every single person back to work until we had established a procedure. And then Paul Shagan was hired, and Paul drafted up our appeals procedure. But it was done with board members serving on it because we didn't trust that management would follow the policies. So, but I think we've gone far astray from that, because I know, we've termed people in the chair's office and the executive office that used to work in my office, termed people for insubordination where it was black and white. And we got the wrong luck of the draw of the board members that got on it, that had an axe to grind with either me or Angeline, and they put those people back to work consistently. And the politics need to be taken out of this entirely. Board members are elected, and they're looking for their next vote. They should not have anything to do with it or anything to say with it. And the people who do serve on the appeals should only be applying the policy. Was the policy followed or not? Not, do I feel sorry for the person? If you look at the history of our appeals, it's a hodgepodge. for the same termination, this appeal board could put somebody back to work, and this appeal board would not put them back to work. The other thing that I think is just a complete contamination and bastardization, and that's not a swear word, that's an actual word, of the process, is when board members seek to get appointed on the appeal board, when they actively seek to get on the appeal because they know who was terminated because somebody called them, there should be, well, they should be off the appeal board, but they shouldn't be able to be on an appeal with a family member. I've made suggestions when the board gets invited to sit in on an appeal, because you have to have 2 board members. And my first question is it somebody I'm related to? They don't share that information.
Well, we're going to ask you that question right at the first initial contact.
Yeah, but so, no, that question's not asked when you get an invitation to sit on an appeal. So how do I know if Isaac is not putting his sister back to work?
Oh,
You know, that needs to be up front, right? Not that Isaac would do that, but that needs to be up front. So, but I think we can eliminate that by taking the board off of the appeals, because we're elected officials. We're looking for the next vote, right? And I know board members over the years that voted to put people back to work because they didn't like the manager. And it shouldn't be that. It should be the person was terminated. Did they have cause per our policies to terminate that person or not? Just like an appellate judge.
Yeah.
They look at the policies, they look at the infraction. Did the person do the infraction or not? It's black and white, and there shouldn't be any other factors considered. So I think we need to evolve our appeal procedure to be based on that. So I think that's probably it for now. We've been wrestling with this since we put it in place. We're worked on it about 10 years ago. We developed an administrative law procedure to be able to do it and then have an administrative law judge do it. I would feel comfortable having an administrative law judge do it, so that it's based on, was the procedure followed or not. I do think people have a right to their job, and as long as they're doing their job, they shouldn't be able to be terminated. And I also think there should be a consequence for managers that habitually terminate people in violation of policy. So,
Isaac?
I'm in total support of what Aaron just said. I sat on, when I first got on the board, one appeal hearing, and you could clearly see the bias of that appeal. And I would almost guarantee you probably have more that are overruled than you actually go through with, because I know when board members sit on it, like Aaron said, it's political and they're worried about their next election. That's why I chose not to sit on it. The other reason I chose not to sit on it is we hire our managers to do a job. And if they feel somebody's not doing that job and they write them up for that, right, and it's for good cause, 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of good HR policies. You write that person up. Who am I to determine if that person should get their job back? So I mean, for at least the sake of our managers, I would like to see that the board step down from appeals. I will never, ever sit on another one myself, so thank you.
Mike, then Rob.
I've sat on quite a few appeals too over the years. 99% of the appeals that I've ever sat on, they've been upheld and the person lost their job. So, because our managers know that there's an appeal process, and they know that if you don't follow the rules and you follow how to terminate someone, you might end up with that employee back. So it's concerning to hear that, this is happening. So, but 99% of the ones I've ever sat on, those were upheld because people have been following it. I do have concerns with board sitting on there, especially if we're hearing this, but there also has to be a checks and balances in place, because HRs are now divvied up. So you have executives over top of their own HR, and if they're telling somebody, hey, do this, and it's not in compliance with policies, I have concerns with that, and that appeal process is where it might pop up. And if it's all under one silo now, we may not hear those. So I would have concerns with just eliminating the board altogether. I don't disagree with Aaron's assessment, though, like having a judicial, but we're not there. So, and until we get there, we have to work with what we got. So unfortunately, this I like that we've reduced the number of board members from 3 to 1 if need be, and I think if we even increase that number where you have a bigger panel than you have board members, like 1 board member and 4 other people on a panel, were made up of all people in the tribe, not just people under that silo, I think you'd have a better kind of way to make sure you're getting checks and balances. My concern is the checks and balance portion. If you're dealing with all just under one, if it was a government side versus a casino or something like that, I think it should be a mix. It shouldn't be all from one silo. And until we have some kind of administrative law court, I think 1 board member on there needs to occur until we're there. So, but good luck. Look forward to the discussion then. Yield.
Rob?
So I also don't agree that the board should really be taking part in appeals. I sit on almost all of them that I can, though, because I understand that with the current policy, that's part of our duty as the board of directors. Until we change it, that's on us. So I don't really agree with saying I'm not going to do it. You know, I've conflicted myself out of quite a few of them. Until we change it, I would say the board has a duty to fulfill that. Now, there's some really good policy questions and concerns that come out of those where it kind of raises your eyebrows to think, oh, well, that's something we need to look into. And I have had a lot of good conversations with Ryan and our HR staff in there after some of the appeals and say, hey, why is this the way it is? And do we need to look at changing it? And most of the time there's an agreement that, yeah, it needs some kind of a revision. So I think there's got to be some mechanism that when questions are raised in there on a policy level that HR can bring those up to the board. But to be 100% honest, I'm with Mike. I think that you have to have some kind of a protection in there, especially when we have executives over the HRs. There's needs to be some sort of a balance with that, and it has to be a balance of who are you using on the panel as far as is there an adequate number of frontline staff there, because I feel like they're going to be just as important as management. You know, I know how management works, and a lot of times management will go with other management. So I think that we have to figure out a way to provide the best protections possible for employees. And like Mike said, I've sat on many, many appeals, and almost all of them are upheld. Because policy was violated, it was documented correctly, the disciplinary process was followed, and there was no question HR did their job correctly, and so did the management. But there have been a few, and very few, where there was definitely grounds for it to be overturned, and the employee was right, and they were being targeted by either management or other staff members, and that came out in the appeal, and it was like, wait a minute, you know, we missed this, and there needs to be policies to protect that. And my fear is that if you know, certain people weren't in the room to ask the right questions, that would have went unchecked, and then you would have be perpetuating a you know, in specific departments, you know, retaliation. So I think that it doesn't happen very often, but who knows what happens once you take, you know, certain checks and balances. And my honest opinion is that we will not reach a fair process until we have a separation of powers and member employees have due process in court.
Okay, Kim Lee, then Bridget. Bridget?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So before I even got on the board, when I worked for casino administration, I know a lot of managers back then would not, they got in a habit of not writing up employees because they got overturned every single time. So they were like, why bother writing people up? They're just going to get their job back. So that was the mentality back 13 plus years ago. I used to serve on almost every one. For a while, it was me, Mike, and Kim Gravel, which I think was good because of the consistency. I think that's important too, because then you are used to hearing the certain cases and you have the consistent answers or votes or whatever. But I do agree that we have an issue with the directors or whatever reporting to CEOs. I think we definitely need to deal with that, because that can, someday we're going to get an issue and we're going to have to deal with it. I don't like, listening to like we're all looking for a vote. That's something that I could care less about. I'm not. I think maybe if we put it in there that you can't, for the units you represent, you can get around doing that. But I think, like Mike or Rob said, sometimes you'll learn a lot of things that we know then we can try to fix, or there's issues that we might not have heard otherwise. So there are some important things. I was with Denny McKelvey for a lot of years, and he fought for that, and he would never want to see the board not involved. So I don't know that I would say to eliminate the board off the appeal. If we do end up getting where we do have a separation of powers, then that'd be great to take it away then. But I agree with a lot that Mike and Rob have said. And I think that there's ways that we can make it so people don't get on there just like somebody, because yes, I know it exists, but I don't like it acting like we are all don't have any morals. Thanks.
Aaron.
So, all right, so the court system outside of the tribe, a judge, all right, so the parameters, you have a prosecutor, you have a defense, and you have a judge. And those are checks and balances to make sure that the jury that's making the decision is making the decision based on the law. So you hear all kinds of stuff during cases, and some stuff is, and I learned all this on Law and Order, is exculpatory or it's prejudicial or whatever. But when you go to an appeal hearing, it's a free-for-all. Sometimes you hear the person who's been disciplined, terminated, oh, well, my manager does this over here all the time and looks the other way because of this person. And that shouldn't be allowed to happen. And once you get down that rabbit hole, board members start listening even more intently because they want to hear all the dirt. But that doesn't matter. If somebody goes for a termination for 3 no-call, no-shows, it shouldn't matter that, that their coworker got away with the same thing. It shouldn't matter that the manager's not consistent across the board in their discipline. The appeal board should be instructed that the only decision you're making here today is, was the policy followed or not? A little bit of effort towards progressive discipline. Was progressive discipline applied or not? Because board members, I've seen board members sit on the appeal board and somebody comes up with, and this is going to sound horrible, but somebody comes up with a sob story and they just can't do it. They can't terminate them. The policy says they should be terminated, but I can't do it. I got to give them a job. I got to pull for them. They're my people. I got to pull for them. The managers are often our people too. And the other coworkers that follow the policies are our people too. And they follow the policy. So everybody should follow the policy. And the decision at the appeal board should be blind, like justice is blind. It should be made based on, was the policy followed or not? And so I even conceded at one time, although I think the board needs to be off it entirely, because I've seen the politics of it. We had somebody in my office again that was terminated for insubordination, and we got the wrong luck of the draw with the board, and they put her back to work because it was screw the chair's office, screw the executive office. That was their chance to do it. Not too long ago, I was called in on an appeal, and HR asked me a series of questions for somebody who was terminated. And it was my conclusion when I left that person was not going to be terminated. There wasn't cause. But the executives in the chain of command, I think, wanted that person terminated, and guess what? The person was terminated. So we have to take it out of the politics. And if we had a process that was predictable, and if managers knew that if you violate policy, you write somebody up, and if they get terminated, they're going to stay terminated unless they made a mistake. And then if the managers make a mistake, then they need to be disciplined or retrained or something, because they shouldn't be terminating people that shouldn't be terminated. So I think that right now, there's no requirement for disclosure if there's any conflict. It's left up to the integrity of the individual on the board. The board members, you can ask them, but if they don't choose to tell you, or they don't choose to tell you that, oh yeah, that person called me. Like right now, I got one I'm going to share with Austin and with HR, but if they call you ahead of time, you should recuse yourself. I know for a fact over the years, board members have teamed up with the person terminated because the person has told me, the person terminated, oh, I talked to this board member, and they're going to be on my appeal, so I should be okay, right? I'm like, they shouldn't be on your appeal, but it's not my decision. So I think that we can't leave it up to the integrity of people to self-report. We don't have an ethics code to require a board member to self-report if they have a conflict of interest. So here's the thing, too, is I don't think, and Rob, I don't think we need line level staff on the appeals. We put those in place because the managers were in cahoots with each other in overruling the lower level staff. But if we had a qualified person making the decision, was the policy followed or not, like an administrative law judge, then that's the only thing that's considered. You don't need a line officer, a line staff member, you don't need an advocate, you don't need any of that, because they're required by law, tribal law, to make the decision, was the law followed or not? It's as simple as that.
Okay, so I don't have any more hands up. I'm going to say something, then we'll move on. So my opinion is this: the board and the chairman shouldn't be involved in this process, period. We're political. We're up for re-election. And I mean, if you give someone their job back, you're going to get kudos when it comes to vote time. So whether it be an administrative law judge, the HR attorney, whoever, you know what I mean? Like, us as politicians, we shouldn't have any fingerprints on it. I mean, and then you can look at what we're personally qualified to do. So I'm a therapist. Social worker, I mean, I would know whether or not a therapist had grounds to be removed. I would know whether or not a caseworker at ACFS. I don't have the expertise to know whether or not someone in a very complicated department did their job well or not and deserved to be canned. You know what I mean? So I think we should support our supervisors, we should support our managers, and if there's problems, you know, we can address that. But I mean, we have about 1,500 employees within the tribe right now. I'm guesstimating, I'm rounding, and one board member on a panel shouldn't have a veto power over whether or not they're terminated, period. And I'll say one last thing. The administration doesn't terminate people. They don't write people up when they have board connections, because they've told me that, period. And that's all I need to say, so we can move on.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one we'll be looking at is the transfer policy. This one presented some conflicts, again, with appeal, introductory, disciplinary, and I think the due process, I don't think it conflicted much of that. But this one, I went through it. All of these policies back, I'm going to say last October, when we were looking at putting out an RFP for a bidder to go through and review our policies and edit them and so forth. I went through all of them at that time to see what conflicted in the policies and what things I felt needed to be changed based on feedback that I got from management over time and from team members and obvious gray areas and conflicts that the policies had with each other. So I took note of all of the policies, and as time went on, the decision was made when we were looking at selecting a bidder to move on and take care of things internally. I took that information that I compiled at that time and applied it to the policy changes now. So these policy changes are basically changes that I took upon myself to make with this set of policies here based on that information. So the transfer policy is one that I changed substantially from its original. Again, I changed it so it applies to all governmental team members. There's 3 definitions in here. The transfer is defined as the reassignment of a team member from one position to another without a break in service. Disciplinary demotion, you'll see that definition in here. The discipline policy, in going through that, I added in a section that I titled disciplinary demotion. Up until now, and it still doesn't exist, but it's in that policy. That's what this references, and that's why it says refer to the discipline policy. And again, a couple of these policies work together. Disciplinary demotion is identified in there, and a job family. Cheryl and I discussed that the job family as well, as far as the transfer goes. And down in Section E, you'll see where we make reference to that job family, where if a transferred team member has already completed an introductory period with no break in service, the HR department will determine if they'll be considered introductory in this new position, if they were transferred to a new position, after confirmation of job family comparison. And at that time, the new introductory status would be communicated to the team member prior to the transfer. What we've had is team members and management not being sure when there's a transfer on whether their new position is going to be considered introductory or not introductory. And there's two places in two different policies that conflict each other depending on how it's read. So in going through these, I want to make sure that those gray areas and those areas in policy that are open for interpretation are defined a little better, and just so that management and team members are more aware of what their standing is specifically, if they're going to be introductory or not. And it alleviates issues with the appeal process and other policies as well.
You mind if I jump in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Jeff, if you don't mind, Mike has a question or comment before we get
sorry.
too far ahead. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Without getting too far ahead, I mean, it was on that specific one that you just stated, E there. So if it's a different family, then they're going to be into a new introductory period. So if you have say a 15, 20-year employee then who's going from one family to a different family, they're then in a new introductory period and then would be subject to that introductory period. So if they were to not work out, say, and they're no longer afforded the appeal as a person who's gone through an introductory period?
Potentially, if that team member went into a position after spending a significant amount of time with the tribe, and they went into a new position that was clearly different than what they were in before. You know, without they shouldn't get hired unless they qualify and unless they hold those skills and so forth. So if they were to go into another position that they maybe didn't qualify for or was in a different job family, I don't know how the job family is determined, but if it was determined to be in a different job family, they would know that then upon transfer. At least I feel that they should, so that they're clear.
Well, I understand that, and I'm glad you clarified that it'd be before they transferred, because I think stating the different family, like completely different division or something like that, it's going to obviously fall into a different family. But I think that this would prevent some movement as well, though, because if you have some people over here managing in the tribe, and they see a position open here that's a little bit higher and a little bit more responsibilities than they want to try for it, they might not know if the family is going to be determined differently, and then that they're subject to a whole new introductory period that they can just be let go for no appeal process whatsoever.
So an example of that for the job family itself, when you're moving from one and going to another and being looked at as introductory, is if, say you're cooking, you're a cook, and you go and you apply for maybe a staff accountant. That's what we mean by the vast difference in job families. Or say you're a maintenance worker and you're going over to an IT position. Right, so that's what we mean by the difference between the different job families.
But if you had a manager managing, say, on the casino side, and then going to something managing on the governmental side, and they're still managing, that's not going to be the same family, though. That's gaming is vastly different. So that could be. So there's going to be a lot of gray still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there should be some discussion on that. For me, we have to look at what benefits the team member. I mean, I don't think any team member should be left hanging if they want to look at go a new direction after a number of years. They shouldn't have to
before
be.
they even apply. Like if they go to apply for it and they'll say, hey, just so you know, that's a whole different family and you would be subject to introductory period.
Right, and potentially, if they qualify for that position, maybe they wouldn't be introductory, but it would be known ahead of time. I guess everybody be on, and again, even if you go into a new position and you're not introductory, if management should be vetting you to make sure that you qualify for that position during the interview.
Oh,
I mean, they
absolutely.
should
I'm
know
not
that.
saying anything about the qualifications or anything like this. We're strictly just talking about transfer and policy here. So just strictly transfer and policy, they're going to know ahead of time that, hey, you're going to be in a new introductory if it's deemed a different family. And even though, the gray area has got me a little concerned already, because if it's that gray that we can't determine, because I think division lines would be easy, but if we're saying they're managing over here and managing over here, they might be in the same family. I'm not sure how to move forward with that, but we're in a draft phase. I think that language needs, I guess, some work, because I think if we have someone that's got 15 years over here and they might work over here and they could potentially be a really good fit, but then they don't want to go through the possibility of, hey, I can just let you go in the first 90 days introductory thing. I think that would be concerning for anybody who's been 15 years and then they abandon not even applying for it because they're like, I don't want to have to deal with that part. So, because those protections are there. And so
And I think that it's important to realize from a management perspective that if somebody's not introductory, I mean, if they're introductory, you shouldn't just terminate them because they're not working out, I guess. But you should try to help them to succeed. So if somebody has been around and they want to transfer to a new position and they're not introductory, that's not an issue. You still have progressive discipline. You still have a PIP. It doesn't hurt if someone's struggling to put them on a PIP to help them succeed in that position. And I think that part of what we have to look at too, maybe this is getting off topic, is making sure that that we're helping team members succeed in their position.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think that would be a better language in here than is that you still have those other disciplinary procedures that you could apply for and all that, but introduction period is introduction period, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to follow any progressive disciplinary projects. It could mean you just get let go. So that's my concern, is we're not really addressing it because it says like families, and to me that's a little too gray. And if we can further define that, or if we can address some issue with a long-term employee that potentially might want to move up somewhere, you don't want them to not even bother applying because they're concerned with an introductory period and someone just going, yep, see ya. So I'd be concerned with that.
Or I guess the flip side could be the policy decision, if the board makes it, could be all of our introductory periods transfer. So if I already did an introductory period, I don't have to redo it, and that can be the policy. And then like a PIP or something else can be put in place if I go to that new position and I'm not working out, then there could be maybe a more mandated process where, okay, now the manager has to put me on a PIP, I have to learn this role, or then I'm at risk for termination. That can be also, that could be the policy direction too. That's why we're here trying to figure out if there is maybe
I think there's going to be pros and cons to either side of this story, obviously, but I got concerns
Because there are sometimes, from a manager perspective, I could see where they want the ability in certain areas to move more quickly to get that position vacated again, to get it filled with someone who has the skill set. Maybe they thought this person did and they didn't, and now they have to go through all the due process, and they might feel like their hands are hampered.
Yeah,
certainly.
And hopefully, though, that gets just play devil's advocate a little bit, that gets flushed out during the interview process, though, too, is that, hey, maybe this isn't going to be the best fit, even though they're qualified for it, even though if it's a good fit's not a good fit. So, all right, I look forward to the additional language then, or looking at it, but.
So thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You go next,
Any other
Aaron, too.
questions?
Okay.
Or any other questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. So we're wrestling with something because of a convention that we've adopted as a tribe that has nothing to do with our tribe, right? So I've been around long enough in different incarnations as a student worker, then as a policy advisor in the early 90s, and then as deputy executive director at one time. And so we are locked into this configuration. Introductory, so ask yourself, why don't introductory team members have any due process rights? That's so that you can terminate people at will, right? And just turn people over, without any due process. We don't have a good system of onboarding and training people so that they know what their job is, what the goals and objectives are, so that they can be successful. That's what it should be all about. And so we should afford everybody some level of due process, even if they're introductory, so that they have a baseline right to their job. If they're coming to work, they're attempting to do their job, and we shouldn't be looking for ways to terminate them. And I know there are managers that look for that. All right. But on the other hand, there's a balancing act between providing for internal promotions, which benefits, if you're one of the people lucky enough to have gotten your foot in the door at somewhere along the line, and then we have a promotion policy or transfer policy, that benefits you, of course. But if we didn't have any qualified tribal members other than who's already working for the tribe, then maybe that would be needed. But as long as there's a cadre of tribal members that are out there that have experience in education, they should be able to apply for those positions. So I don't like internal promotions for that reason. And also, I do think that when you move from one position to another position, there's a risk involved, right? Generally, it's because there's greater level of pay. You should be back in an introductory or learning period, but it shouldn't be as a negative. It shouldn't be as a negative. Introductory means in 3 months on the 29th day, and how many times I've seen this on the 29th day, somebody's been fired. Just because they can, and they don't have to explain it to anybody. That isn't fair to the person who took the position. It's not fair to coworkers because it creates a toxic environment. But I do think that if you move from one position to another position, you have to be able to do the job. And if everything's put in place to help you to do the job, that's the big question. Is everything put in place? But then you should have a right to retain that position. But if you're not going to work out, if you're just not suited, like let's say somebody went to school for social work. Maybe they got a MSW from Michigan State, and they're working for our department, and it just turns out they hate children. They don't like kids. Or they're counseling somebody in behavioral health, and they're like, if this lazy son of a whatever would just quit drinking, then their life would be better, right? If you're not suited for the position, then there should be some opportunity to transition that person out of that position. That doesn't mean I think they should be summarily dismissed, but if they're not suitable for the position, you can't keep somebody in a position that's never going to be suitable for the position. But again, it's all predicated on, did we give them every opportunity to succeed? Did we give them goals and objectives? Are they effectively supervised? I can tell you in the positions that I had for the tribe, I never got an onboarding, I never got goals and objectives, I never had expectations. It all was self-driven. I had to do it on my own. But it shouldn't be that way. We should have a relationship between the organization and the team member that we're going to make you successful. We're going to give everything you need to be successful. So then we don't have to worry about terminating somebody before the end of their introductory period.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I don't see any more hands, so we can keep going, guys.
One of the things I wanted to jump in and mention before Jeff kicks back in here is he had mentioned earlier about the different acting, appeal, and we're on the transfer section now. Behind the scenes, a while back, after we were not putting out to bid and we decided to do this internally, I'm going to give Jeff the kudos that he had mentioned about earlier. These policies in front of you, the interim, appeal, transfer, introductory, discipline, due process, separation, those are all from conversations we had had and feedback from the board prior. What we did is, Jeff did a lot of work and for us to view together, is to make sure that they marry into one another. So if you're referencing the due process and it has something in there about a transfer, we're taking away the gray areas and attempting to make it as clear as possible. A lot of these in front of you, and the policy list in front of you, they have some part to do with one another. So that legwork has been done on our end, and we're at the final phase to bring it back to you. So when you're looking at transfer, introductory, the conversations we just had, discipline, due process, that is the work we've done behind the scenes, is to make sure that when they cross-check each other, that it's not so gray. Does that make sense?
Are we moving on to introductory then, or is there, because before we do that, I'd like to just hit one more paragraph here, D.
Okay.
This kind of ties in with the discipline policy, so if you see that, that's going to be something that's reflected in the discipline policy, but it says a transfer will only take precedence over any other applicant for purposes of elimination of position, accommodation for physical restrictions, or any other reason management and HR determine as necessary for operational needs. Then, barring such extenuating circumstances as determined by HR, a transfer will only occur pursuant to the standard application and hiring process. I put that in there because the discipline policy has a disciplinary demotion, which is considered a transfer, and I don't want that to conflict with the transfer policy in being that somebody that's being disciplinarily demoted might overshadow somebody that is an applicant that may not be part of that not be considered because somebody is under some type of a disciplinary order. So again, that's something that is there due to the discipline policy. With that, I can move into the introductory period policy. Introductory period policy. There was quite a few changes in there. Start off, this is for governmental team members only. The policy, I indicated in there that this is, I defined introductory team members. So the first 5 lines there you'll see are the introductory team members defined. Then I have reference to the transfer policy for exemptions to the introductory status. And then there was also some confusion the way the original policy was written on the 90 calendar days, 180 calendar days, what seasonal team members are and so forth. So I spelled that right out so there's no confusion there. Number 4, B4, shows that team members subject to disciplinary demotion is introductory in their new position for either 90 or 180 calendar days as determined by the new position's exempt or non-exempt status. The procedures in the introductory period policy were a little confusing in that it said that the extension of the introductory period policy has to take place prior to 90 days. I don't think they were considering the 180-day introductory period when that was written. So I clarified that a little bit as well. There's been issues with management wanting to extend the introductory period. Again, they get towards the end of the introductory period and they want to terminate somebody, and now they want to extend based on vacation they may have had or days that they may have missed, and then in that first week that they extend it, they terminate them as introductory. This puts, I guess, answers some of these questions too, as far as they're going to extend, if they're going to extend any introductory period for missed working days. It spells out how and when they have to do that. So there's some clear communication on whether or not you're being extended due to days that you may have missed from work. If they're going to extend the introductory period due to unsatisfactory performance, then I've also indicated some language there regarding performance improvement plans and so forth. I'm trying to see any other significant changes that were made in here.
Go ahead, Aaron.
That may be about it.
I appreciate the reference to the performance improvement plan, because if we are going to extend somebody's introductory period, there should be cause to do that, and the manager should have to document that. So not only should there be a complete record of where the performance was short, the PIP should match the deficiencies in the performance, and then the PIP should spell out, and then there should be a good faith effort to implement the PIP and checking in. So all of that needs to be evaluated, not by the person who's making the decision. Somebody above that person needs to make the decision. Did you do everything you could to, progressive discipline, to try to retrain, to retain this person? So I appreciate you putting that in there.
So before we go any further, I want to give you guys a heads up. We have 10 more minutes to complete this item. We have the Food Sovereignty Committee slated to give us a presentation at 3:30. So if you guys need more time, if we have leftover time after they're done, we can complete it at that time, or we can get you back in front of the board, whatever the board prefers, okay? So we get 10 more minutes, and then we got to take a pause from you guys.
Thank you for that update.
And just to touch on that too, I think that the PIPs are important. I think that management has to, focus on onboarding so that the team members can be successful in that position. And if you are deficient, then that PIP will help you as a team member know where you have to improve. And if your introductory periods are going to be extended, then everybody is communicating that and it's documented. And I think that would really go hand in hand with this introductory period policy. I guess with that, the next one on the list is the discipline policy. Let me transition over to that a second. That one was changed pretty drastically from what it originally was. It wasn't written in a good organized manner from maybe your verbal warnings on up to the termination. So I tried to rearrange that a little bit so that it made more sense as you were reading it. I started with the types of disciplinary action, letter A there. Starting out with a verbal warning. I went through it and clarified everything about a verbal warning. I'm trying to think what specifically was just making sure that management discusses with the team member on an informal basis the problem and the consequences if the issue is not corrected. That's obvious on the verbal warning. They're given that. It shows that the next step in progressive discipline is going to be a written warning. The written warning, I kind of went through that, did the same thing. The next step after the written warning is typically a disciplinary leave of absence. Again, it's just the third step in the progressive discipline, or second step, depending on what the infraction is. The next thing is the performance improvement plan. I kind of touched on that, explained the performance improvement plan, and you can see where it goes back into it should not exceed 90 days. Talks about failing to achieve specific results and goals and certain performance expectations, how those need to be outlined in the PIP. And again, this goes back to helping a team member be successful in that position. If somebody elects to transfer to a new position, if they apply for another position, they transfer while they're on a PIP, there has to be an approval by both management from the current and the new position to allow them to transfer. Then the disciplinary demotion, that's kind of where I got into that. I think that it's important that we identify that because there was some reference made to that in policy with really no clear procedure definition involving that. And you can read through there and explains the disciplinary demotion, and there, all policy benefits and eligibility associated with a new position would then apply. So if someone's being disciplined from an exempt to exempt to a non-exempt position, then they're not going to retain their exempt benefits because they're being disciplined and subject to demotion due to that. But I don't think that was spelled out anywhere in policy before. Also, I put in there it's an option for management to consider prior to termination. It's not a requirement. Then I went into the termination, being placed on a, I have here disciplinary leave of absence. Yeah, after the, just in for a warning. Yeah, well, this is the language that's already on there as far as termination, letter A. And I think B was the same. I think everything else in here was pretty much what was in policy before. I just reworded it. At the end, I also indicated that that certain disciplinary action may be disputed through a grievance or appeal process. However, administrative leave and performance improvement plans cannot be disputed. The PIP is something that is utilized to help you be successful. It's not a punishment. Therefore, it's not something that should be disputed. Administrative leave is a new thing that incorporated into the due process policy. There's a lot of confusion on disciplinary leaves of absences and putting somebody on a DLOA prior to termination. I think we need to get rid of the DLOA and just use a 3-day and 1-week DLOA that we utilize for disciplinary action. And when somebody's going to be terminated and they're placed out on which previously was a DNA, I feel that we should have a administrative leave. And we can determine whether that's paid or unpaid or how that might be handled in the future. But I think if someone's placed out on administrative leave, it could be a separate form. It's because the bottom of the disciplinary leave of absence form that shows that you're going to be placed on a DLA pending HR review for termination. On the bottom of that form, it says that you may file a grievance. It creates a lot of confusion. I think we just need to look at when someone's getting placed out on leave for potential termination, that we call it administrative leave, and get away from the disciplinary leave of absence term that really applies to disciplinary action outside of termination. I think that's about it.
All right, good timing.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments from the board? Rob?
I just did have one thing, and I think it's more to bring it to the board's attention. I previously reached out to our previous general counsel about this, and he said that it was brought to HR's attention, and Ryan was doing some review on it and would bring something forward. But I think that we need to have a conversation about the use of the term in employees' job descriptions that says all other duties as directed or something like that. It's been brought to my attention a few times that it's been overused, and I think that we need to build a protection for our employees within policy for that, whereas from a few different departments, one of them, the employee makes, I think it was 13 something an hour, and was regularly being asked to do something that an employee makes $21 an hour doing. And when the employee said, hey, I've been doing this for full days, a couple of times in the last few months, and one, I'm not qualified to do that, and two, I don't make the same as that person does. And they were just told all of their duties as assigned, and you're going to do it. Otherwise, it's insubordination, and I don't think that's right. So I think that we need to have a conversation of what that looks like and what are the parameters where an employee could be asked to do something that's outside of their job description. And we can't just point to all of their duties as assigned and have them do something that's $7, $8 above their pay grade. Is that sum up what you had reviewed, Ryan, or was looking at. I had talked to Aaron about it, but I never touched base with you on it, and I wanted to bring that in front of the board so we could open that up for discussion, and obviously we don't have time right now, but I just, I want it to be known that I'm gonna address it through a resolution and policy, and sooner rather than later, so if anyone has any input on that, I think it'd be a good idea to either put it on a workshop, because I think there needs to be parameters built around that.
Okay, Aaron.
Yeah, so I think the solution is additional related duties as assigned, number one. Number two, they should have to sign off, and if additional duties are being added to somebody's job, it should be memorialized in a PAF, and it should be signature up the chain of command, because that way we can stop the abuse of assigning people to do, managers putting off their work on all of their team members when the managers paid sometimes twice as much as their team members.
Real quick, Austin, just to answer Rob, if I may. I know we got the next one at 3:30 here. We did talk about this internally, Rob. Both HR directors and I have had discussions. We haven't put pen to paper on what that would look like in a policy, but we've been trying to trickle down the messaging to both the Quaiden side and the government side that all duties as assigned is not just a free-for-all catch-all. They have to be related, and we've been internally through our current procedures trying to help train managers on when it's appropriate to use that and when it isn't. That being said, we will work on actual policy language, but we have been having those conversations internally, so.
Yeah, and I think that it needs to be memorialized in policy because it's still happening. So I'm grateful that you guys are sending out the message like, hey, this needs to be addressed, but, when you have someone that's supposed to do generalized work and you're putting them on heavy equipment, one, it's not safe, and two, they're not qualified for it, and three, it's not fair to them to do something that's outside of their pay range. So if we do want to get them qualified, the one thing I don't want to do is make it so strict that a manager is walking on eggshells and like, do I even ask them to do this? Because there are some things that are reasonable. But there should be parameters around it. If it exceeds 2 hours, or if it's so many steps above their pay grade, like, if you make $15 an hour and you're asked to do something for an hour or two of the next pay grade up, I don't see that as being a big deal, and everyone should step up and be a team player. But if you're being asked to do this for full shifts and multiple times within a month, we owe them. You need to compensate for that. So I'm not saying that we should restrict it from happening at all, but there needs to be parameters around it to where if you're going to do it, we need to be compensating those employees for what they're doing. So if we have absolutely no one else to do that job for those days and it needs done, one, it should be you ask the employee if they would like to do it, and two, you compensate them for the job that they're doing on those days, not that the job that they do every other day. So if they make $13 or $15 an hour and you're asking them to do something that employee makes $21 an hour for 3 days out of their week, they should be compensated at that 21 range for those days. So I'm just asking that we look at it and build a policy, because I don't like the idea of just sending out a memo and calling it good, because that might fix it for 6 weeks. But I want to make sure it's fixed for employees 6 years from now.
All right, guys. We appreciate you guys coming in. I appreciate all the hard work on this. It's obviously, a lot of hours that you guys put in, so we appreciate you guys being back again. So thank you.
We'll be back.
Yep, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll finish up the last item that's on for today, and that is the Food Sovereignty Committee. So 5-minute break, guys. All right, the item that we're currently on is Food Sovereignty Committee. We have Larry Jocks here from the committee, we have Jennifer Dale Burton, and we have various committee members on Zoom as well. So Larry, whenever you're ready, go ahead and get started.
I appreciate that, thank you. So yeah, I'm here on behalf of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe Chippeway's Food Sovereignty Committee for the long-awaited report to the Board of Directors. And so we're going to go through a few slides. The first, starting off with our vision, and I'm just going to read through these kind of quickly here. But the Anishinaabe Food Sovereignty is about revitalizing our autonomy, the role food plays in our relationship with the land and with one another, including our more than human relatives, and asserting our rights and acknowledging our responsibilities regarding our own food systems. To recognize the importance of traditional foods and the role they play in our physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and social well-being. To protect and restore the land, water, and air that sustain us, and to ensure that future generations have access to healthy and nourishing foods. To cultivate, access, and secure nutritious, culturally essential food. Food as medicine and fibers produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and to ensure equity, reciprocity, and an honorable harvest. To ensure we have a food-educated populace that has understanding of family and community stability, or food stability across the tribe. And to ensure that tribal citizens have the sustenance they need to thrive physically, mentally, socially, and culturally, not just for today, but for the next 7 generations. And one of the things that we wanted to do was perpetuate Shingwak's vision, which in kind of 5 condensed steps were to stand on firm cultural ground, to protect, to be protected and surrounded by our way of life, to above all have ceremony in our way of life, medicines, and connection to spirit, and to adopt good things from other cultures where appropriate, and share with all creation. And you're going to see some of this reflected in some examples as we go forward. A mission, essentially the way it is in which we're doing things, to provide guidance, standards, and leadership as committee members across the food sovereignty landscape, to involve multiple tribal departments and constituencies across the breadth of tribal government, divisions, departments, and partners aligning with the tribe's food sovereignty interests. Our mission to provide communication, outreach, act as liaisons, to have accountability of our activities, creating an annual report to the board, like what we're seeing today, and we'd like to add in an annual public meeting, and to make tangible recommendations regarding the protection of our tribal food systems as part of our relationship with Earth. And you guys know our purpose is just to provide good recommendations to the board of directors. Our values, program activities reflect the desires of the community and Anishinaabe culture. Serve a wide array of membership and tribal agricultural interests, respect the natural and spiritual world. Tribally grown foods are available to tribal members. That's important. Knowledge, skills, and abilities gained / shared with the program creates value across the entire tribal community. Enhance tribal social fabric, enhancing morale, resiliency, and independence, and 7th generation sustainability model across the program. So we wanted to start off with a series of values so that we had a core to all the work that we're going to be doing forward. So we have a series of committee members, and we have a few spots that are open and looking to be filled. We have bylaws, and I think you guys will have a copy of the bylaws, and I'm going to skip reading these for the time being. Except for I do want to, and Marty and Amy were excellent in drafting these bylaws. Some of the things that are in here, which I really like and want to see us move into more practice, is this concept of that the subcommittees, they have these kind of roles in which they review our content with various lenses. So if you are acting as part of the Crane subcommittee, you are reviewing things through that leadership. And if you're, advising on external leadership issues regarding tribal food sovereignty, including relationship with other tribes, federal, state, and local governments. So they would be reviewing our content through that lens. And then, Loon would be looking at infrastructure, data, and organization. Fish would be looking at education, training, and research, and liaising with the education committee. Bear would be talking about food access, quality, and integration to tribal health and wellness. Martin would be talking about food security, including tribal seed banks, tribal laws, and policies. Deer would be looking at communication, arts, entertainment. And Bird would be liaison with the culture committee and the FSC ceremonial functions. So everybody has this kind of different essentially hat they would wear when they were reviewing some of the content, so that we're making sure we get a robust overview of what we're working on. So the food sovereignty department, and again, we're the committee, and we're going to be making a recommendation for a food sovereignty department. And one of the things we want to see is this concept of keeping a traditional core. And just to very quickly make an example of what that could look like is just the investments in traditional foods first, and that they would never exceed the investment in traditional food production with non-traditional food investments. So example, if we put $100,000 into maple syrup production, we would never exceed that in bee production. So just to make sure that we have a core in what it is that we, historically and culturally would have done. That is one of our goals. One of the things we also wanted to do was, as we're talking about developing a department and the duties of the department, is to recognize the geographic spread of tribal citizens. Obviously, we're all across the nation, and we have, this kind of this thought that food sovereignty is an excellent program for tightening our social fabric and increasing our resiliency through difficult times. And as people are looking at the news, there's obviously there's some difficult times that may be ahead, whether it's climate change or other. So the tighter the social bonds, the more our people are resilient. We believe the Food Sovereignty Department would be good for that. So establishing a new department, and we believe the Food Sovereignty plays a role in various aspects of life and is connected across the government. And because of that, we think that an office, if established, if we were to make a recommendation of where in the org chart, that it would be directly underneath the board of directors. That way it could more meaningfully coordinate across divisions and departments. We'd also wanted to note that there's a historical context for food sovereignty. We enjoyed an abundance in our prophesized homelands and in a pre-colonial context. We had covenants with Earth and are more than spiritual beings, or more than human spiritual beings. We entered into formal agreements, treaties with other tribes. We entered into treaties with pre-U.S. and pre-Canadian foreign nations. We entered into treaties with the U.S. and Great Britain and Canada. So the vast majority of these treaties contained food provisions. There are 50 treaties, including 105 articles between the Anishinaabe and the United States that are food related. Our tribe has a responsibility to ensure that we honor those treaty relations. And it's this kind of spirit that we propose the creation of a food sovereignty director and staff within the department. We made some kind of very preliminary estimations and activities that each of these individual these individual staff would be doing. So, and these would contain the wage, fringe, and travel and so they're really rough estimates on the costs. We'd have to get all wages and stuff factored. But ultimately, the food sovereignty director, their role would be program design, budgeting, grant acquisition, alliance building, program delivery, and reporting. A food sovereignty coordinator, they would be coordinating with the videographer, with culture, with community health, education, natural resources, membership, and other similar departments that we have already providing programming. And a farm and food sovereignty technician in the scenario in which we have more of a physical presence, program delivery, plant and animal care, soil care, farm maintenance, and processing. Now it would be $270,000 for all those positions. That's a rough number. But you could start off a lot smaller with just the food sovereignty coordinator and work your way up, or do the whole thing. That's a direct, we're looking for a little feedback along the way on how we should scope a budget that we bring back to the board. For example, coordination, we looked at all these different departments and were able to have discussions and imagine ways in which all these departments would have some role working with the food sovereignty department, where they could provide their material, provide their content, provide their expertise, coordinate better with the membership. So all those internal departments, and then plus we see external coordination with Bay Mills, Waishi Bay Farm, with Little Traverse Bay Farm, Saginaw Chippewa Farm, MSU Extension agencies, realizing there's a kind of larger agricultural and food sovereignty things that are happening in our area that we would be fitting into and coordinating with. We wanted to also provide a quick, tangible sample of coordination. In the concept of having a culturally funded food forest project and a transportation food funded food forest project, both of these kind of are programs that would theoretically want to see food forests. They'd come to the committee, we'd provide some recommendations, and so we could provide recommendations on what exactly to plant, such as wild plums and Saskatoons, service berries, raspberries. We have a list of things that we believe are these kind of culturally relevant and things that would make sense for us to make recommendations on moving forward. If we were to have staff in a department, then they could make recommendations and also help on locations, soil maintenance, signage, harvesting, processing, storage, and doing events around that. So they could act as an extension and work with those different groups. We drafted a food sovereignty director position summary, so we have that kind of ready to go for factoring. Communication and education. So as we had talked earlier about the membership being all over the country, if we were to have a whole series of different activities, that those activities should all be recorded and then made available to the membership wherever they happen to live. So whatever we do, we would see, video of those things so that we're broadcasting it to all the membership. In that concept, and this would be the kind of the, I guess one way in which we could see this play out at a very budget-friendly manner, starting off with kind of the cheapest possible things. We'd have a video series that would contain a multitude of different groups, so like community members, Sioux Tribe existing programs, maybe neighboring tribes, maybe our local food sovereignty related educators, where they would be doing various video series. A couple examples, for community members, we might see winter recipes from the pantry. From food sovereignty educators, we might see topics on food justice and ethics. We could see garden planting and seed sharing, we could see maple recipes and fishing gathering rights, and you have a whole variety of different things. One of the things I ran into in my own yard was overwintering the chickens I bought last year. Like, how do I bought them, I made this infrastructure for them. Well, what do I do to protect them and do my best to make sure that my birds are safe and well fed and we have a system that supports them? Anyway, the concept is that we could draw from existing resources in the community, video them, and get that concept and start a really strong communication going around agriculture and food sovereignty. So we kind of made this quick graph, which would be the cheapest to the most expensive options. So tribal members at their homes and in their gardens, kitchens, sharing their knowledge and program, that would be pretty cheap to get video and to share content around that. Tribal governmental programming, existing a little bit cheaper. If we add some new stuff, a little bit more expensive. And if we get into a tribal commercial production, then that's even more funds. But I think we'd like to see that someday. So we have this kind of range of implementation that we could be looking at. We could scale up, so we grow into an in-person educational training webinar series, which could include things like storytelling, garden planning, soil, plant starts, direct sowing, buying, trading, watering and weeding and harvesting and marketing, selling, the whole kind of range of what it is to be growing and taking care of food and taking care of each other. And we could theoretically even grow someday into an intensive educational program where we're doing more support around beginning farmers to get them up and where they're actually making funds around this, making money that makes a difference in their individual families. And we could take a lot of the risks out of those beginning farmers to take on something that could theoretically be beneficial to them. We also want to provide some general guidance on property acquisition. And this is something we've been talking about for a long time. And the guideline around property acquisition that we came up with was use existing land for food production where possible, purchase land when able, and establish a system for land donations. Develop on lands that are safe for food production. Where necessary, heal the land and soil that may have been contaminated. Consider the land / property suitable for native production. So example, we need maple trees for maple syrup production. The amount of effort required to make the soil suitable for certain uses. Sometimes you need to have animals to produce, quality soil, especially in our very clay heavy areas. And consider a history of chemical use on that property and the amount of time that has passed. Consider the proximity to tribal member density. So whenever we get a chunk of land, there's a short drive to access food plots is beneficial. A short drive for farm staff and access to farm staff is beneficial. Short drive for membership who are attending programming. Short drive for being a market or delivery to an existing market. All those things will have costs down the line that we can avoid by having a perfect location right out of the gate. Other things to do when we're looking at acquiring or utilizing our existing infrastructure and land. Gas, electricity, water, septic, having those things already on, that's definitely a benefit. Any buildings, houses, barns, work areas, buildings suitable for a wash pack plant, those are beneficial. Roads, fencing, natural barriers, water drainage systems and ditches, dual usage with other Sioux Tribe programs. Does it make sense for this to also be utilized by culture, natural resources, education? It may make sense to have a wood shop or a clay shop or art area that is aligned with the farm. There's a lot of kind of co-use benefits. Now, we provide these guidelines as something to kind of think about, but any area that you guys are considering acquiring or utilizing for this, you could take that area, send it back to the committee. We'll run through these guidelines and kind of give a report back saying, yeah, this makes sense here, and here's some areas of concern. We can, have a little back and forth on what that would look like. So with the dedicated lands and built infrastructure, we could eventually have farm field days, lots of people visiting our food sovereignty facility and farm. We could have partners and school farm visits, farm tours, lunch and speakers. We could have a nice harvest festival, lots of options once we actually have something. Program activities, just want to note that we could have, depending on the property and the setup, we could have farm and wild harvesting. We could have a series of commercial production. We could have community production and harvesting by membership. We could also have opportunities for buying cooperatives. And I want to note that every step along the line of either of these options, whether it's the inputs and the growing, the harvesting, wash pack, storing, selling to different areas, all of those provide excellent educational opportunities for membership so they can get in and they can see these different components and put some of it to practice. Community garden plots, obviously we could have raised beds, no charge, small plots, no charge, and if we wanted to have bigger plots for people who want to expand, we could do small fees to kind of help address some of the costs of the program. Supporting animals and the harvest, we recommend the animals are supported and are thriving to the point that membership can have ample opportunities for harvesting and hunting. At home, we want to make sure that members are supported with anything they want, ducks, chickens, quails. Food code on reservation that supports food sovereignty. We'd like to talk about establishing a food code, supporting rare and heritage breed birds. We want to see community scale harvesting, theoretical hunting preserves. I know some of that has already been talked about, but for turkeys, grouse, squirrel, deer, fish, and to have, again, support, so processing, education, and locations, and then theoretically commercial production of maybe bison, maybe rabbits, something that would have been culturally relevant to us. Financial recommendations, any large scale or any animal investment should come with a 10-year financial plan from the food sovereignty director. You know, there's a lot of risks that you can take on when you are looking at those things, so we want to make sure that we're in all in agreement of what that would theoretically look like. Note that plans need revising as market conditions change, and that government-style accounting doesn't always mesh with needing to discount products, to move them, to prevent spoilage, make room. So if we end up going down that venture, we want to make sure there's some flexibility built in. Educational farms typically run at a cost due to higher staff costs. And I was down at MSU, and they're like, oh, our farms all take this huge loss. Well, because normal farms don't support professors, and you know, it's a little bit expensive. But any revenue that the farm will make educational programming more affordable. A small loss on an educational farm is typical, and something that makes it so that you can make the money that you invest in this go a lot further. Supporting fish harvesting, so on the personal fishing side, food codes within treaty areas that support food sovereignty, having those good food codes established. Education on multiple uses of fish, for community scale fishing, community fishing events, processing and preserving education and locations, subsistence fishing mentoring, gill net making, sourcing, setting, maintenance and storage, and then having commercial fishing processing supports are all things that we talked about. So we talked about an investment, kind of both things at the same time, a commercial and community agricultural timeline with some main activities. The first thing, and sorry, the words are a little bit small on this, but first thing was to establish a food sovereignty department, and this is all theoretical, and we'd want to see some guidance on what this could look like. So 2025, establish a food sovereignty department, hire a food sovereignty director and coordinator. Later in the year, begin video educational series and orchard planting. In 26, identify, utilize properties and infrastructure to develop commercial and community food production / education. Later, 26, community gardens and raised beds available to membership. In 27, commercial operations begin, maybe a maple syrup plant. Property improvements for meat production. Maybe 27, host a small food sovereignty summit. 28, meat production begins. Could be rabbits, could be buffalo. Could scale up to that. 28, later on, will be an infrastructure year. We bump up all of our infrastructure. We'll have some feedback on what improvements we need by then. Value-added production, you know, we could at that point in time be making maple-flavored fish, beef jerky, different things that we can do a value-added thing, market, sell it, and ship that type of stuff, if that's a direction we're interested in. So those are two areas that are kind of co-developed. And then we also wanted to propose a couple future resolution topics. So we'd already mentioned the food sovereignty department and budget estimations, staff, land, infrastructure, and programming defined based on scope feedback from the board of directors. How big you guys want this thing, we can respond to that. Expanding the protection of life and soils. It came multiple times that we'd like to see no pesticide use on tribal lands, and this aligns with the resolution that was already passed on protecting our more than human relatives. We could see resolutions on de-risking investment in agriculture for our tribal members. We could de-risk investment by leveraging cost-effective instruments to promote and scale up private tribal citizen investments, microfinancing, capacity development to jumpstart an agri-food system. We could provide community resources such as land, processing and packaging space, storage and marketing resources for free or for a fee for scaled up use, depending on like the size of what they're trying to do. That would decrease input risks for tribal member beginning farmers. We could provide bulk processing coordination, again, decreasing input risks. We could provide prices for crops which the tribe would be willing to purchase through various programs, which would decrease production risks. We could theoretically establish a market space, a tribal farmers market with options for free open stalls or rentable, lockable areas, both with access to electricity, water, and year-round access. Again, near population centers for access to customers, but also on tribal lands to ensure the integrity of sovereign producers. And then tribal food code development, the ability to set our own tribal food code, ensuring the rights of tribal producers are well defined while also ensuring the safety of consumers. And that's the presentation. Which.
Thank you, Larry. You spent a lot of time working on this, and I think you did an excellent job building this. So do we have any questions, comments from the Board of Directors? Rob?
Yeah, I have a couple. Let me just get my notes out, though. So first of all, I really like the two-prong approach, whereas we have the presentation that you guys worked on, which I attended one of the committee meetings that you guys were discussing this in, and I really like the approach that we want to establish food sovereignty on an individual level for our members, so that way they could be more independent at home and grow their gardens at home, but also have a long-term plan where the tribe takes on a role, because we obviously have members who are disabled, and we have elders and small children who aren't going to be able to put in the work to feed themselves. And I think as a tribe, moving in the direction where we could provide those services will not only establish a sense of security, food security for our people, but it'll also make people feel more independent and inclusive in our process. Not to mention the long-term health benefits of that. So I just wanted to point that out. But one thing I wanted to look for, and I had the idea while you were presenting, is that, so like you mentioned in there, Larry, that our members are spread out all over the country. And we have a member who introduced a box garden project to the Standing Rock Reservation that did extremely well. But we have a lot of local foods and stuff that we know grow here, but with our members spread out, I would like to see us do something that we could send out regionally appropriate box kits. So if we have members, let's say in Florida, Washington State, Minnesota, wherever else in the country, that we could send them a box that's regionally appropriate for their growing zone, with all of the information within it to give them the knowledge they need to grow in their area, because what we grow up here might be drastically different what you would grow in other areas, and they're still our members, and I think that providing that will allow them to have some more security in that. And then I had a good conversation with Joni from Housing, and she informed me that there's a grant that Housing normally applies for, but she would be willing to discuss with us and the Food Sovereignty Committee to maybe opening a door for the Food Sovereignty Committee to apply for it, because it kind of covers the same areas, and I can't remember if that was through HUD or USDA, but I think you could apply for up to $2 million, which would be great. And then the other thing I wanted to agree with and bring attention to was the difference between having a tribal department and the idea that we have volunteer community gardens. Volunteer community gardens have worked to some degree, but not to an extent that we needed to. And I think, with the growing food security issues that we're having, the chairman coordinates Feeding America, and we've seen the distribution of food levels go down substantially in a $50 billion cut nationwide. So we need to take an active role in filling the gap there. So I think that does need to be a department, and it needs to be people's paid positions, so that way we can ensure that it's being done. We're not dependent on volunteers. And that could grow exponentially based on how we deliver the services, and are we able to sell enough to the general population to provide for our own for free, which should be our model. So that way we're not utilizing it should be a self-sustaining model to where we don't have to go into tribal support to fund most of this. And I think with grants and a model that we capitalize on any revenues that we can, I think that we could move in that direction where we could provide for our members. Now, the other thing is that I know that this could create some debate because especially because we have to be very fiscally responsible coming up. But I would argue that the utilization of third-party revenue in our health could be utilized because it's a strong preventative measure, and we have diabetes and a nutrition program in IHS. And, you know, the way I see it, for every one person that we prevent for having diabetes, we're saving exponentially on the cost of treating them. So I think that we do need to look at it as a health concern as well, and have that follow through in meeting with our health director and see what can we manage to provide to our food sovereignty committee to where we can get a program where our people in the nutrition program or diabetes prevention or any of our other physicians can utilize the program and say, look, we're going to offer you all organic homegrown food, which we know is going to have a benefit to those ailments. And I think that the long-term benefit of prevention is going to far outweigh any investment that we make now. Otherwise, we're going to be paying for it in treatment later on down the road. The other thing is I think that the presentation was really good. I think there was some great ideas, and you could tell that a lot of really good minds worked on this. But I think what we're lacking right now that we need to move forward is a chronological plan with achievable goals. So I think that we need to have more updates to the board, more sit downs where you guys can tell us what you need to be successful and what your long-term goals are. Because the presentation was great, like I said, but it's a mind map of possibilities. And I think we need to start getting to a point where we move in the direction of where are we 6 months from now? Are we vetting properties that we could be using? Are we applying for grants? Which ones are we applying for? And where else can we utilize resources from? So I think that having a long-term plan with short-term achievable goals, so we know that we're getting there and we could physically see the outcomes of it would be there. So that's all I have for the presentation, but I do want to make one announcement today because I think it's really awesome, and I would like to ask the Food Sovereignty's help with it. But thank you to all of the Unit 1 directors, because we have approved funding for an orchard and within Unit 1, and I think it's going to be really awesome. And so I'd like the Food Sovereignty Committee's input on placement of it, and maybe some options of what we can, the best products to grow there that are going to be long-term sustainable for our people. I think it's going to be really awesome when we could look at an orchard and see our people going out there and picking apples, 10, 20 years from now from something we did today, which is the idea of what you guys presented on the Food Sovereignty Committee. The one place I'm looked at that would be really good, I think, is it would be the northwestern side of Odenong, but I want to make sure it aligns with you guys' long-term plan as well, because it's going to be there for all members to use whenever they want. And, as long as there's fruit there, then people can go and utilize it. So I think that's a really amazing thing, and all the Unit 1 directors supported it, so I want to say chi miigwech to them, and thank you for this presentation. It was good.
Okay, Kim?
I know you and I had a brief conversation about it at one point, Larry, but did you ever look into the aquaponics, hydroponics ideation?
Yeah. So we had a presenter come and talk about what that would be to set up a hydroponics unit, and with some level of investment and staff, we could have an indoor hydroponics operation. And you can grow a lot of things, lettuces, and there are a series we had gone through a couple of varieties of things that could be grown in that operation and payback terms. And so we have some preliminary numbers on it, and we could dive into that. One of the things that we kind of focused on was having actual staff to be able to support those long-term actual production. Because as a committee, meeting once a month, it's going to be hard to, have that daily oversight of some of that production. But we do believe there is, at least from our initial presentations that we got, that there's benefit to it, and that the
Benefit would be, I think, year-round growing, right? And that's huge for our area, or any area, I guess, really. But I think part of, obviously, what our long-term goal is to food stability across the board, right? And we're talking about all over. So I think, one of the things that we potentially could look at is what buildings or facilities do we already have? And without, again, looking at grant funding and all of these resources, which we've been correlating all this information for a while, but I mean, if we could come up with something where we could grow year-round and provide food sustainability, and then also share information. We've got a 71,000 square foot building down south of the bridge. I mean, we've got other facilities. Should we be looking at how we can grow food year-round in some of that, so we can feed members all over, and then sell what we can't feed them? Or whatever we need to do to make that work. But I think where we live, we have to be a little more creative than just, can we grow something that doesn't generally grow around here, unless we start getting in some cattle and some hogs and stuff like that. But either way, we need property for that. So I think we definitely need to start moving forward with a plan. And all of these things are great, but have we spent any of the money that was set aside for?
No money has been spent at this point in time.
Okay.
But definitely agree that we should be doing some sort of insulated year-round growing. I mean, we're up here in a very winter environment, and we're just now being able to put seeds in the ground, and we're halfway through the year. So we need to be talking about what that level, if we're talking about large-scale production for
with
for
aquaponics, what fish can be used for?
What's the aquaponics?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is. I know we talked about more hydroponics as something that was
I think
viable.
that those go hand in hand, right? Because if you can use the fish,
The
call it waste,
and there are fish in our area, and I know I have a friend who did a large scale aquaponics.
well, there are fish in our area, but we also.
That do well with large temperature ranges.
So I don't think that it would hurt. Maybe talking to other departments, but because then everything can grow in water, and you're using the fish water that you have to, which we're growing fish anyway. So if those could go hand in hand, that may be a neat thought process. And again, I'm not sure what fish can be used for that, but might not hurt to look into it. So I'll stop at that.
Okay, Tyler.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're talking about, reinvigorating and putting some energy into our local and regional food systems, and not establishing anything outside of the norms of what our communities normally would do. Correct, Larry?
That is what we're suggesting.
Yeah. Okay, some of the discussion kind of had me thrown off there a little bit from some of the board members who, when we're talking about food sovereignty, the importance of our regional food systems and what was taken away from us is important to invest in. To Rob's point earlier, we did write in the multi-year funding agreement that nutrition and nutritional education programming is a part of that. But again, we do have to talk with James and our new CFO and see where we're at with that, because I could definitely provide an initial investment into that. I know that other tribal communities are doing it with some of the same language in their multi-year funding agreements. So I just wanted to highlight that point. That is part of the reason we had put that in that multi-year funding agreement. The other question I have for you, Larry, is did you guys, so you're talking about the food sovereignty department, but have you guys discussed the importance of naming a Department of Agriculture and what goes along with that?
Could you please elaborate on what on your question there?
So having our own, as a sovereign nation, having our own Department of Agriculture opens us up to additional kind of funding from the USDA, the federal government, and other things that go along with that, including, as you mentioned, having our own food code, which is something very important that we should already have, because then anything that we sell within tribal land can go under our code, similar to our neighbors at Bay Mills who implemented their food code, I want to say before the pandemic, around 2018, allowing them to sell hunted fish, hunted, harvested, gathered food sources in their own farmers markets on the reservation land. Has any of that discussion occurred, or has any drafting of food code begun, or is it just something that's being talked about right now?
Yeah, we haven't. So one, I think we were envisioning the food sovereignty department and essentially being a kind of all-in-one cover for also an agriculture department, that they would be, the naming could be played around with. The food codes, some years ago I did pull, feels like 6 to 8 different nations' food codes, so we'd have examples to work from when we got to our food code development. So we've got essentially all these different tribes, what they've thought on their food code. And then we get to the point of developing our own, we'd have something where we kind of pick and choose and look at the structure of what's, what's already out there. And there are some tribes who've really well developed their food code, so we don't have to start from scratch on any of that. But we haven't spent a lot of time on food code development within the committee at this point in time. We've definitely talked about we need one and we want to support the development of one.
Yeah, so I think that's really our next step. I would like to hear from you guys, but I think one of the things that other tribes have done prior to having an established Department of Agriculture, they vote to name the tribal council or board of directors or whatever their structure is, the Department of Agriculture, until such department is created, put the food code underneath of that and any of the employees within the division underneath of that to get the slow start moving forward. As you recommended, you showed us, potentially 3 positions or starting small, just a coordinator. That would be, one way to go about it. But I'm definitely in support of really getting this moving forward. I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, and it's kind of taken a back seat, and I know there's a lot of discussion and planning that went into it on your guys' part. So I just would like to know, how we can help move some of this forward a little quicker. And then what, I know you came here asking for a little bit of direction in some areas, but what is it that you guys want to do? We're trying to take advisement from experts in the field, and looking at the committee, it's clear that we have experts in the field, and how do we support that and move this forward? Is it a small influx of money? Is it naming this Department of Agriculture with having our food code underneath of it? What are the next steps to get you moving forward, Larry?
Yeah, again, we're providing options depending on, we've seen kind of like the larger scale things, like we would like to see, land acquisition, we'd like to see commercial production, we'd like to see support for membership. I mean, these are things that we've listed. We also kind of realized, we can't 100% ask for the moon on something, so we've provided some kind of scaled down options to stage up. And I would really like to see a position that can help with grant acquisitions and managing some of the day-to-day stuff, getting some more. If we need somebody who can focus on this all the time to be able to get the responses that you guys are looking back, that someone's doing this day in and day out. The coordinator would be good, but a food sovereignty director would be fantastic. So initial position, and again, if we could do the large scale investment, we obviously are going to recommend the moon, so.
Yeah, well, and Kim Lee had brought it up. We still have that property down in Detroit. I mean, if we're not looking at putting up warehouses and things like that, I don't know what the field down there looks like, but it's 70 acres. So the growing season's probably a little bit longer down there than it is up here.
Yep.
But like I said, I'm in full support of you guys moving forward with something. So even if that's just focusing on one crop or one potential meat source or whatever to get it moving, that's great. But yeah, we gotta focus on something here.
Okay, Aaron.
So we got to find some low-hanging fruit, and I don't mean that to be a pun, but maybe the orchard. In the delay that took up to get this up and running, a whole bunch of opportunities are gone now. And I hate to be the cold water on here, but SNAP benefits are going to require a work requirement. Medicaid is going to require a work requirement. All this, I think it was the right thing to do to build into the agreement with IHS and to expand the use of third-party revenue, because it's exactly what we should do. But we also need to be realistic and sober that probably 20 million of that's gone. It's going to be gone. But on one hand, if there's a SNAP requirement for work and a Medicaid requirement for work, we need to be thinking about how do we qualify to have people earn their work requirement in order to get their Medicaid and to get their SNAP benefits. And that could be labor, free labor for our exploitable work labor for our farming. I think Rob mentioned the CDBG grant. That grant is gone. That was eliminated out of housing. They won't qualify for it. That's why they give it up so easily, because they don't qualify for it. We're not going to get that. But also we should be thinking about, we do have a large commodity food program under our USDA program, and they distribute food. Over the years, they've done a really good job with community education and food nutrition. I don't think they're doing that like they used to do. We could coordinate that through community health and do some food and nutrition information out to people. And you have some existing staff there. Looking at the budget, it's like you had me all the way up till we got to the budget, and then it's like, okay, how do we make this? How do we do this? We're facing, double-digit deficits right now, millions of deficits, and then if these big cuts come to fruition, then we're looking at, I don't even know what that is. It's devastating. So, but all the more if we don't have access to safety net programs from the federal government, people are going to be hungry. People aren't going to have access to food. So what is it that we could do in the shortest turnaround to get food back out to people, even if it's not us supplying the food, but it's the knowledge about how to grow, in a community garden in your backyard, or how to do that. And we're not that many generations ago that I know my mom's generation, they did farming on Sugar Island. And then the old bully settlement where all the bullies and the Josephs used to live, that was all a farm, a big farm. And they supplied food that fed themselves. They didn't have welfare checks. They didn't have casino revenue. They didn't have any of that. So we need to be thinking in terms of almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and what can we get to the quickest turnaround time, because we are facing austere times with the federal safety net being decimated, and people really are going to need food to survive. So prioritizing about what we could actually do. I do think this is a great presentation. I'm glad that the board decided to move in this direction a couple years ago. I wish we would have moved a little bit quicker, because we had all of that COVID funds that could have bought property, could have had a factory up and running. I don't support fish farming. It might have a different, what do we call it, aqua hydroponic or whatever it was, but our tribe is opposed to fish farming because of the damage that it does to our environment and the toxicity of that. So I don't support that. I would support internal fingerlings and rearing for that to bring them back out into the environment, but I don't support aquaponics, if that's what it was called.
All right, guys, I'm going to say a couple things and then we'll hit the road for the day. So one of the things I want to correct is there's more to food sovereignty than just planting food. So food sovereignty really is a multifaceted approach to reduce food insecurity in tribal communities. So that can include quite a few different things. So it can include planting things, it can include raising cattle, and then it can include things that you don't traditionally think of, like our treaty rights. So the tribe completed a survey with its membership in 2012, and one of the things that our Natural Resources Department identified is that in the 1836 ceded territory, our members harvest enough food to produce about 1 million meals per year. So food sovereignty is also about fighting for treaty rights. It includes spending the resources for whitefish ponds, walleye ponds, all those things. But there's a lot of different things at play here. It involves partnering with different food delivery systems like Feeding America, which brings tens of thousands of pounds of food every single month to our community. So I want to include that. Larry, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything to you. You know, the tribe right now, if you're relying on tribal support, can't fund new positions, it can't fund new departments. So if you're going to do something like this, you're going to need to find not tribal support, but grant funds or an initial investment from the health division through third-party revenue. I mean, the board has outspent their budget by millions of dollars, and our fund balance can only sustain it for so long. And this is heartbreaking, in my opinion, because it's something that I believe in a lot. You know what I mean? My fiance has published several different articles about this. The last paper she published won her journal's paper award for Paper of the Year, titled Food Security and Food Sovereignty, the difference between surviving and thriving. And really, you can figure out what a government prioritizes by what it spends its money on. And so far, we haven't spent a cent on food sovereignty when you have a tribe 20 miles from here that has a thriving farm. So I hope that the board of directors and this government can reduce spending so at some point we can fund something like this because it is sorely needed. And I've said it before, I've said it again, you guys need property more than anything. If those golf courses don't make money after this year, they'll be back on the chopping block, and I think they'd be great farms for you guys. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Workshop adjourned.